Yeah, good evening and welcome to this special meeting of the Board of Directors of the Midpeninsula Regional Open Space District. I am Margaret McNiven, President of the Board of Directors. This meeting is now called to order. It is 5:31. This meeting is being held in person at the District Administrative Office and by teleconference. Members of the public can attend and participate in the meeting in person or via Zoom. Instructions for submitting public comments are available on the meeting agenda. May we have roll call, please?
Director Gleason?
Here.
Director Christine Tucker?
Here.
Director Riffle?
Here.
President McNiven?
Here.
Director Holman?
Here.
Director Director Kishimoto? Here. And Director Seer. Thank you.
Okay. There is one item on our special meeting agenda, acceptance of the Financial and Operational Sustainability Model Refresh Report. May we have the staff report?
Good evening, Stefan Jaskulak, CFO. Tonight, we're receiving the final report on the Financial Operational Sustainability Model Refresh Study done by Baker Tilly. Andy Belknap is here to present that to you. I want to thank you again for approving the new FTEs at the last meeting, and we heard you because one of them has already been advertised. A few more are in the pool that we're looking through to pull forward quickly. And another one is also going to be advertised either Friday or Monday. So we're working on it. Appreciate the support on that. So in the interest of the report itself, let me just make place for Andy and he can walk you through his final report, what the changes are with the retreat or November 14th, I think 14th report when he was here together with Nancy. Gave all of us the 49 recommendations, solid recommendations, and we'll take it from there. Andy?
Thank you, Stefan. Members of the board, I'm Andy Belknap with Baker Tilly. Let me first apologize for the typo on the first slide there. I know it's January 24th. Not January 25th. I was looking at the 2023 calendar when I did this, so sorry about that. So anyway, just to refresh your memory, this project was really aimed at updating the 2015 FOSM, and we were focused on, as we were with the first one, with ensuring mid-pin sustainability and dealing with the significant growth that you have had and will continue to have with your mission. The fact that you have taken over a significant number of new open space acres, made improvements and increased visitation to those preserves, and done that at a growing rate, means that you're growing at a significant pace for a local government. But at the same time, in the last 8 years, you've become a more mature local government agency than you had been. And what is notable, I think we talked about this in December, what's notable is a number of systems and systematic practices that have been put in place in the last 7 or 8 years. It's really impressive. So you've gone from being kind of a startup where, you were just doing things on the fly to being a more mature organization. And that is going to be a trend that continues. And many of the recommendations in this report are intended to build on that development of systems and systematic approaches that you've already started. So I'm going to take a minute and talk about some of the more major threads of the recommendations contained in the report. In most cases, these threads contain more than one recommendation, and there is an implementation action plan that we've put together. And actually, Stefan's staff report, I thought, did an outstanding job of breaking the implementation work into annual increments over the next 4 years. And I think it's a really good roadmap. But the major recommendations that are contained, probably the biggest one, is to bring a bunch of your support functions into its own department. We called it a central services department. You may come up with a better name for it, but it basically is a bunch of support functions that help the organization run fleet management, facilities management, property management, contract support services, a bunch of things that are the backbone of the organization in its own department. You're big enough now to support that kind of administrative support department. It'll become a lot more efficient, and you'll be able to have some specialists in this type of work now that you're bigger. Another, I think, major recommendation is to develop a smallish in-house design capacity so that you can do a little bit of preliminary design work and scoping with your own staff, because it'll be more efficient than going to a contractor or vendor for everything. So if you need a little schematic done so that you can then maybe go to a contract engineering firm and say, could you give us a proposal to take this further? It'll be a lot more efficient if you can go to them with a schematic, like a schematic design, or that you can look at. You can look at maybe a 2 or 3 schematic design proposals and say, yeah, we like schematic design A. Why don't we go with that? That'll be a lot more efficient than having to go to the time and trouble of getting bids and getting proposals. If you have a little bit of capacity in-house to do that sort of thing, it'll be faster and cheaper. So we recommend that you do that. You're still going to use contractors, engineering, architectural contractors for, the vast majority of the work. But having that capacity in-house to do a little bit of preliminary design will really help get things done faster. And, as they say, time is money. Another major recommendation, and one I know you've talked about, is creating a coastal office, because a lot of your work is now coast side. You need to put some staff and services over there. You need to have a presence over there. That's where a lot of your work is going to, that's where, honestly, a lot of your work has been for the last 10 years. And excuse me, it's going to be for the next several years. So it's going to better balance your geography. I know when you look at a map, you don't appreciate it's not that easy to get over there. So, it's not, you need to have a presence over there, and a lot of your constituents are over there. So you need to have some boots on the ground on that side of the mountains. Fourthly, and this is a little bit of an abstract concept, but honestly, revising the project entitlement process, there's nothing I could think of that will streamline project delivery more than if we can make this a reality. And what I mean by revising the project entitlement process is getting the counties out of the minutia of entitling your projects. Right now, they process a permit on virtually all of your projects. And by that, I mean, they take your project in as a discretionary permit that they condition, just like somebody building a house would be conditioned, or building anything would be conditioned. And so they attach a number of conditions of approval to that permit. And this can take many months as you go through the permitting process. And then you have to abide by those conditions of approval. And I think we ask a real basic question about that. And the question is, why? You're a co-equal branch of government to the county. Other independent special districts don't take their projects through a independent permitting process at the counties. And so we wonder, is there really value added here? You're an independent elected body, just like the Board of Supervisors. So there's not a democratic purpose being served here. So we wonder, what's the basis for this? Where's the value added? If there's truly a regulatory purpose, like a Corps of Engineers, a regulatory purpose, Fish and Game regulatory purpose, that's not an issue. That still has to be permitted. We're talking about just entitlement processing. So obviously this is a sensitive discussion that has to be had, but the question is, why not have the discussion? Because there are independent special districts that don't go through the county. Just like you, I just found another special district that's does work in the 2 counties that you work in. Doesn't have to get conditionally approved. So worth having the discussion. Another major recommendation has to do with the staffing. And as Stefan just noted, you did approve some staffing recommendations just recently. We actually recommend, we did create a staffing model. I don't have faith in the staffing model going out 30 years. I have a lot of faith in it over the 5 and 10-year horizon. And we recommend adding a total of 93 FTE over the 10-year time horizon. And we have discussed in great detail what those additions would be over that time horizon. We also have recommended some composite metrics using better analytical capacity within the organization, and those will help you project your labor needs much better than you have now, because Midpen doesn't have real deep analytical capacity within the organization. You need more of that as you grow. And we have recommended some analytical investments. We have also recommended investments in the volunteer and docent programs. And last, and I think this is an important point too, that Midpen invest in its organizational development improvements, because, and I'd underline this for your consideration, is that you can't just go out and hire what you need from other local governments, because there are no other regional open space districts in this area that you can hire from. So you're much different from a city or county, because you can't just go out and find your XYZ in a neighboring city or county. Your peers don't really exist nearby. And unfortunately, the housing costs in this area are a real barrier for people to come into the area. So you have to, I guess what I'm trying to say here is, the bottom line is you have to grow your own. And that means a lot of organizational development of your staff. because you're going to find your best people by growing your own people, from entry-level workers to your general manager. I would not be surprised if we find future general managers coming up from entry level, because you're going to grow your own, because it's hard. It's going to be hard to recruit, because there's just, where do you recruit from if you think about it? So that's why we have so much about organizational development. These are some of this. I wanted to mention some of the scope activities and talk about where you'll find the work that was in the original scope. Reviewing the organizational structure, you'll find that throughout the report. The biggest area was in that central services revision that we recommended, but we also recommended some other organizational changes, most significantly the maintenance staffing and the wildlife and resiliency team that you'll find in the report. And you'll find repurposing, the second bullet, repurposing of existing positions. That's also included in several areas of the report. One of the things, the third bullet talks about if any additional positions should report to the board, and we don't recommend that at this time. In the future, you may need to have a discussion about an internal auditor as a position that might need to report to the board. Right now, the controller, Mike, is handling that internal audit function, and that really has worked out, I think, pretty well. But at some point, you might end up with a controller, somebody besides Mike, that's not interested in that internal audit function or not qualified for whatever reason. And then you might need to have a discussion about an internal auditor. The board would most organizations with an auditor have that auditor position report to management. Sometimes, though, it reports to the board. The board's always involved in the audit function. The board's always involved in whatever the annual audit plan is. But there are structures where the auditor reports to the elected officials and structures where the internal auditor reports to management. So you may have that discussion in the future. We have quite a discussion about the docent and volunteer plan. You have a plan, but it needs to be implemented. It may need to be refreshed, but it needs to be implemented. We were also asked to review if certain contracts should be quote unquote insourced. And we do think that design work, some design work should be insourced, and we talk about that. And then we were specifically asked about evaluating property management, facilities management, and fleet management. And quite honestly, those programs can be significantly improved within this central services departmental structure. So that's one of the near-term improvements that we've recommended. This is not very legible, but Stefan is familiar with it. This is just a screenshot of our implementation action plan, which breaks the recommendations into step-by-step tasks so that management can tackle them. And Stefan, in his staff report, did use the implementation plan to prioritize things for the fiscal years 24, 25, 26, and 27. And you've already approved 14 additional FTE. And then in the 3 years, an additional 18 FTE will be added. This is a graph just showing how staffing will change or has changed between 2012 and then going out to 2034. By 2034, the organization will grow to just between 250 and 300 employees. So there'll be a fair amount of growth going on. Most of the growth is going to be in operations. This shows you where the growth is going to occur. Most of it is going to be in visitor and field services, followed by there'll be some in administration and then some in planning and project delivery. We don't really anticipate much in the office of general manager and general counsel. And I just kind of covered what it says in this slide. This is talking about where the growth and staffing will be. And then I ran the staffing model that we built out over 30 years, just so you can see what it looks like. Like I said, I don't really have a lot of confidence in this because, you know, frankly, the way we work is going to really change. I think none of us really know how artificial intelligence is going to change how we work. My thinking about it is it's really going to change how we work quite a bit. But I don't think anybody knows how things are going to change. We did, you know, do this staffing model, and according to this, you would have by 2053, you'd have between 400 and 450 employees, but I don't think this is very precise. But it was part of the scope of work. We did do our best to estimate what your FTE growth would look like, and this is what it shows. So that's it. I'd be happy to answer any questions, and thank you for giving us this opportunity to work with you. We really have appreciated it. I don't want to stop talking without thanking the staff for their assistance. They truly have been outstanding to work with and have given us anything we could ask for and have been wonderful to work with.
Yeah, thank you, Andy, for doing this. And it's so great to have gone through the process of refreshing this, to get so many inputs like you have, and to read, you know, from here, you know, here's a fresh version of where we go from here. So thanks for putting it together. I want to come back to a point that I think Greg may have brought up earlier, or somebody brought up earlier. The only part of this that makes me a little bit nervous is we're adding a lot of staff, and we're not really changing the organization that much. And I just wonder if you could comment either from experience or so on, because gosh, in the first FOSM, we radically changed how we were organized. And here, we're not really changing that much, but yet we're adding a lot of new staff over the next 5 years. So
Yeah.
Can you go into that a little bit more, or anything?
No, I think that's a good question, and I think you're right to be asking that question. But the organization that we came into in 2023 is an organization that fundamentally works.
Sure.
And you all can be very proud of this organization. You really have done a good job here. The organization that we worked with back in 2015 was really struggling.
Mhm.
We needed to put some structure around it. It just didn't have enough structure.
Right.
It was very much it was very much in startup mode, where everybody was doing a little bit of everything.
Mhm.
And it wasn't because the board wasn't doing a good job, and it wasn't because the management wasn't doing a good job. It was just that the management was trying to do everything. It was all over the place, and had not had any time to put in any kind of structure. I think that since I had the privilege of being able to work on both projects, the organization that we came into the first time was really, really struggling. Could not produce basic information. This time, when we asked for basic information, we got it. It really, you have good systems. I guess you don't need major structural changes because what you have here is an organization is working pretty well. No organization is perfect. Every organization can be fixed. But quite honestly, I've been a management consultant for almost 20 years, and I think that major structural changes to organizations should be avoided if possible, because they are very stressful. There's a lot of friction, and they are costly on people and organizations. And if you can avoid them because things are working pretty well, do so. Don't, management consultants sometimes have big egos and think that they need to blow things up and start over with a clean sheet of paper and say, this is what you need. This is the new matrix, whatever. This is the new, the boxes need to be completely reshuffled. And what I've learned is try to avoid that, because it imposes a big cost on the people within that organization. And so keep your ego in check. And if things are working pretty good, keep the structure as is and make marginal adjustments. Don't blow everything up. Mm-hmm. And you don't need to blow everything up. You got a good organization here. Great. Thank you. And I'm humble enough to admit that you don't, we don't need to blow everything up.
Director Riffle, if I can just add a little bit, just thinking about this question, just from my perspective, and I've been here with the district for 25 years, so I know what Andy is talking about in terms of a startup type organization. It very much felt like a very young nonprofit back then. Two things that come to mind that to me are just indicative of how much we have grown and matured and how well the structure is working for us. Right, at least right now, if things drastically change in the future, then maybe we need to take another look. But back in, pre-FOSM 1, mm-hmm. We were an organization that was always looking at the examples of others and trying to learn from others as much as we could to capture those learnings and implement them here. Now, a lot of people are coming to us. Now we're seen much more as a leader in the fields that we manage and that, that where we work in. And now we're actually leading the way in many ways and creating pathways for others and innovating in ways that other organizations can't. The other one, and, is just all the recognitions and awards that we've been receiving, which is again indicative that our projects, our processes, how we do our work is of very high quality and very well received and recognized by numerous organizations and professional affiliations and whatnot. So it's just, we're like in a whole different level now than we were before.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of explore the same, slightly different angle of the same theme. But first of all, I just want to say there's a lot of really good work here. And I thought there was a tremendous amount of really good feedback, clearly coming from a lot of different sources and lots of insightful comments there. So to the point that Kurt brought up, I think we're creating a sort of flatter, wider organization, more people. And in certain cases, maybe with the exception of the central services, it's sort of going up through the same management chain and to the same board. And I think that requires us to be better at pushing decision-making down and spreading that decision-making out, relinquishing some control, right?
And that comes up over and over again in the document. There are a whole bunch of different places. It talks about, reducing the time senior leadership spends on operational activities, increasing decision-making authority of department managers. There are many, many comments to roughly that effect. A lot of it's about management, but I expect that, the board is part of that bottleneck as well. So I think there's feedback there for us as well. And then finally, there's this comment that says this has been an element of Mid-Penn culture for a long time.
Right.
So this is it's a cultural thing, right? It's an organizational behavior, but it's also part of the culture, and that's hard to change.
It is.
But we require that change. This organization that we're setting up requires that change, right? So there's only one specific recommendation that seems to kind of act on this, and it feels a little more tactical than I would think it should be given the type of feedback that's in the document. So I'm wondering, is there something more that we need to set up there where we get more detail on what specifically does the board and the senior management team need to do differently? How do we actually affect that change? And then also on an ongoing basis, how do we know if we're making progress?
Well, I think when you do your senior management evaluation, it would be good to talk about how we're doing at pushing down decision making, because I think that's going to take a lot of hard work, because the culture here is that decisions are made at the top. So it's going to take hard work to delegate down. And the board, I think, could set a tone for that by making it a point that you support that, help Anna do that, give her support for doing that. Because, when you do that, and when you support decision-making at lower levels, there will be a few times when people will make mistakes. You need to know that. You need to support that. So that's one suggestion. But you need to kind of have that at top of mind, I think. The organization will be better for it. What was the second question again?
Yeah, so the first one was how do we get to more detail on what specifically we need to do? The second one was how do we actually affect the change? And then how do we know if we're making progress?
Well, one way you'll know is you'll have more and more management folks showing up here making presentations to you. So keep track of that. And when I said you're going to have to grow your own, that's part of growing your own.
Can I add, Andy?
What's that?
Can I add, let me add some comments too,
Sure.
because this one applies very
And I'm not
directly.
trying. I'm not trying to.
Let us be.
I know you're
Yeah.
you're a great manager, and I know that you want to do all those things, but everybody's a creature of how they've grown up in their organization.
Yeah, and so for this one, what I need from the board is some patience and grace, because I review decisions, issues, projects when they are of high profile, of high interest, high potential controversy, when there are particularities that need to be considered. And so I take very close look at those issues with that lens, because I have that 30,000 level perspective that I can think about and anticipate what might happen if A, B, or C occurs. That's not always the case with department managers or line, or the staff that report to them. They're very, very good at the the issues and the themes and the topics that are specific to their department. But they're not always fully aware of the things I'm aware of, or of particularities between, different interests that each of you have that I'm just very clued in and have a very good understanding, or potentially of, community concerns that maybe aren't very well known across the agency, or things that are happening in the media that if this comes up, that's going to, spark their interest because there's an issue over here, not at all related to us, but can now be directly linked in some way. And so then we get pulled in, right? So they're not always aware of that, and neither can I necessarily expect that because they have their focus area, and that's what they need to really be thinking about. So I guess the patience and grace I ask of you is there might be issues that come up. And I or Brian or Stefan or Susanna aren't part of that process. But that is the trade-off, that just, you have to know that going in that is the trade-off, that potential issues might come up and that we just have to come back, change things, make corrections, what have you, and bring things back to you.
Thank you. I had a couple questions, but I did also want to follow up on this change management concept because it's something that I've been thinking about as well. And what I'd like to say, Anna, is that what the board, we need from you how we can work more effectively as well. Keep us in our policy lane and maybe away from some of our individual things that we're like really focused on that takes a lot of staff time. It seems more and more as we move to a larger organization where we're trying to streamline and work more effectively, we need you to help us stay in our lane. And sometimes I feel like that conversation's not there as much as it could be, where perhaps you give us a little bit of feedback and say, I need this from you and less of that. And I know that's hard probably, but it does feel as though as we move in these next 3 or 4 years and starting is to have a more candid way or a candid way of communicating upper level management and board what's working and what isn't, as we work through the implementation plan here. Because I agree with Andy, we're not broken, but we will have to make some changes on all sides to work more efficiently and effectively. So I'd like to move on if we're done with the change management piece. I have a couple other questions. Yeah.
I just had a follow-on to that,
Yeah.
to that question. So, Anna, I agree with your comments and Zoe's follow-up, but I also think that that's part of management development, right? I mean, it's not only us, but it's also the people sitting back in that room. It's getting our expectations are going to be that way, as well as we need to develop the skills for them to be able to do that. So that's. Thank you.
Yes, thanks. Thank you for all this good work.
Thank you.
I appreciate the questions that have come up so far, and I have some too that go into the to what you're recommending in terms of change management. So in particular on what page is this? I can tell what page it is. On page 52, 57 it is, of the report. As work becomes more complex, effective communication and efficient meeting management will be critical to success. Likewise, delegating, problem solving, and decision-making to employees that are aligned at all levels of the organization improves workflow processing and keeps projects moving by avoiding the need to vet each decision through the executive team. I think that sounds great. And within that, there's also these questions that come up for me. So, and a lot of it has to do with communication and training. Did you find it?
Yeah.
Page 57?
Yeah.
Yeah, the second paragraph under committed leadership.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm not to say that this couldn't happen. Of course it can, and it'd be great if it can and will. But communication is really critical. How do you keep cross communication going, cross training?
Mhm.
So if somebody has, you know, a project in in their, um, in their docket to do, but it really involves another department, but they don't know it, it involves another department or other expertise. So the cross-training is like really critical. So
Mhm.
people know when to ask questions.
Right.
So that's one aspect of the training. Another aspect of the training is, and that has to do with silos, basically. Another aspect of the training is a lot of really good people who are really good workers don't become good managers.
Mhm.
And so that also has to do with training. And I don't think the rate of this growth is going to accomplish what I worked for a company one time, and it grew, and I was the first person to walk out the door because it grew and it was falling apart
Mhm.
because people weren't trained. And so it was just, I mean, it became not a fun place to work and it wasn't a good place to work. So it's sort of like, you know, one department can be in charge of making sure the product is really great, but the customer service sucks.
Right.
Or the sole of the shoe is really great, but the upper is, you know, can't hold laces together. So it's cross training, it's training, it's avoidance of silos, and training having to do as somebody moves up the ladder. Because I agree with you 100%. Like growing our own is essential, especially with the cost of living here.
Yeah, it is.
So it's
Well, you know, one of the things about organizations is as they get larger, the need to communicate sort of grows exponentially because you can't you can't over communicate. Sometimes people think it's particularly the higher ups in an organization sometimes become frustrated with the need to communicate because there seems to be a constant appetite for communication. One of the things that everybody needs to get used to is as this organization grows, that appetite for communication throughout the organization is going to grow, and it's not going to grow linearly. It's going to grow exponentially. So get used to it. To your point, the leaders, including the board, have got to get used to the fact that the appetite for communication within the organization is going to grow exponentially as the organization grows. So you're going to have to emphasize that communication and cross-training more to the point where it hurts, where you're going to feel like, God, we do this so much. Why do we have to do this so much? Well, the reason is you have to, because as the organization gets larger, the appetite and need for it gets larger. And when I talk to chief executives of large organizations, that can be one of their biggest complaints is so much of my time is consumed with communicating within the organization. I wish I didn't have to do so much, but I do, because if I don't, people feel like they're not getting communicated with. So, you know, that should be another point. Whenever you guys are getting together and talking about goals, talk about communications till it hurts. And I know it will, because I've been there. But you know so much. You guys sit at the top of an organization and know a lot. Understand that the folks that are working within the organization don't know all that stuff, but they hunger to know it. The organization is no less important to them than it is to you, but they don't sit at the top. They don't know everything. So one of the ethics of leadership in an organization that's large and getting larger is to have the ethic of communication. And I know that it is not it sometimes feels like a chore because you already know this stuff. But you gotta push it out there to the point where it feels like you're doing it too much. Trust me, you're not doing it too much. And that And coming back and looking at this once in a while and reflecting on that need to communicate maybe will be helpful, because if I know anything, the one thing I do know from interviewing so many people at lower levels in organizations is invariably they feel like they don't get enough communication. Even if they're communicated with a lot, they always, always, always feel like they don't get enough. So.
Is there, to follow up on that, thank you for that. To follow up on that, is there a good training model? And this is asking a very broad question, but is there a good training model for someone so people don't know what they don't know?
Yeah,
That
well,
me included.
there's tons of them. One I like is called Say It. It's just about getting people together and letting them have an opportunity to say it, you know, because many times people are intimidated and they don't feel like they can say it. Ask any question, in other words, even if they feel like it. You know, you talk to people and they feel intimidated in a room like this. Sometimes people feel intimidated.
Mhm.
They feel like they can't say it. One of the things about a healthy organization is you can say it.
Mhm.
And we need to try to make our organization a healthy organization where people can say it. If they have an idea, if they have something that bothers them, if they just, you know, whatever it is, say it.
Mhm.
Don't not say it.
That's great. One of the things that this is the last piece is the thing that I like maybe the most about what we've been talking about is that Southwest Airlines, for instance, like the employees own the airline,
Mhm.
and this like really fosters pride of ownership by having different levels of staff being able to make decisions and stuff. That's really, I think, one of the strongest points of this.
Yes, I mean, and you know, and even the best run organization can hit rough spots. Like, you know, this time last year they had, but you know what? They've doubled down on a lot of that stuff. And
I accidentally interrupted Director Kirsten Tucker, so I'd go back to her before I go to you. Okay.
Thank you. A couple questions, I think maybe for Stefan, I'm not sure, but let me
Sure.
thank you, Andy.
yeah, thank you.
On recommendation 12, I'm looking at the implementation plan, Stefan. In FY 2024, you do have explore the self-regulating authority. And I was just wondering if you could put a little meat on the bones of that particular implementation item for this next year. What's planned for that?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So for that recommendation, we will start looking at that this year. It won't be something that'll be wrapped up by June, for example. But that goes back to Andy's comment about, do we need to get permits for everything?
Mhm.
Can we self-regulate that? To what extent? And it'll take a lot of communication with the counties as well to see how we can reparse that, how much we can take back. That has to go into good communication, I would think. So it's going to take some time. We've already, for example, we've got some progress with San Mateo late last year, where we got more blanket permit ability, right? But how do we do that? What does it look like? Who's going to be involved? Elected to elected? Is it staff to staff? So we're going to start that this fiscal year, but it'll take some time to completely wrap that up and get to some kind of product and end game.
So just like, I was going to add to that.
Go ahead, please.
So we do also need to do a little bit of research to find out what other agencies, and Andy just gave me a lead on one of them. What other special districts are actively using the self-authority ability? Learn from that. Also look at all of the different permitting processes that we undergo with the cities and counties right now, and figure out, based on those processes, what what are the issues that these jurisdictions would have if we were to say, well, that now belongs to us? And then figure out how we would address those questions, those needs. There could be, you know, for example, for building permits, we don't have an inspector now, but there might be a need for us to consider having an inspector for that type of work to sign off that indeed, you know, the construction was per the plans. It's those, I mean, there's a lot of minutia in there that we have to kind of really dive deep and figure out how do we go about this? What are the issues that we need to address and overcome so that when we come to the county, and we're going to be having conversations with them throughout, we can come with, you know, all those questions answered, so that there's comfort level there on their part as well and support on their part for us to proceed without getting challenged. But we'll know more as we start diving into it as well.
So one thought on it, as you're describing that, that seems like a really heavy lift for in-house staff to do. And I was just wondering whether there might be a consulting entity or some external entity that could assist with this, do some of that pick and shovel research, that might offload you and streamline this and make it go a little bit more quickly. I don't know if that's the case, but it seems like it's something that might be worth looking into.
We'll explore it. It's not a common type of request.
I know it's not, but
who has the capability and is it possible? But we'll explore it.
It feels like a big job for in-house, given everything else that's on your plate. The other thing I had was with regard to the coastal field office. I know that the coastal management plan and enacting that and making it happen is, but I didn't see that really woven into the implementation plan. I know it's probably there, but the field office, is that just kind of an ongoing effort, or where does that fall within your plan in the next couple of years?
It's pretty quick. It is mentioned in one of them, and it is
Did I miss
ongoing.
it?
Yeah, the coastal management plan shows up in every single year. And then there's an A, B, and C
I
underneath
assume
that.
it's mostly with recruiting staff.
Well, but one of them, and I think it's 25, if I remember correctly, maybe 26, does mention the coastal field office, but we have been looking and we are continuing to look. And there's a couple of encouraging developments that might make this happen pretty quick.
Yes.
Really speaking.
I'll add to that as well. Right now, there's 3 possibilities. Each one has its own challenges and issues. And so we are monitoring them. One of them might have a buyer, but we're not sure yet because there's some issues with the proposal that they have for the property. So we're going to continue to track it because that right now seems like our most viable opportunity. Another opportunity also exists, but that's going to take some time because there's a lot of planning that needs to be involved with other entities. And so there's a lot of coordination and time that's going to be taken there for that. And then another property we're interested in, but there's dual interests in the property with another jurisdiction, and the uses that they propose might not be as compatible for a staff facility use. But I can tell you that right now, this is the first time I've ever had several options before me as possibilities for us to keep tracking. In the past, every time we looked, there's no possibility, there's nothing exists that's viable. But for the first time, we have a few options. Each one has, again, its issues, and we're tracking them. And we'll see in the next few months if one of them has some traction.
Okay, thank you. And then with regard to one of them, with the county, whether there might be the possibility, even if it's not something for a coastal field office, if we might want to make a contribution to that for farm worker housing or farm labor housing. Yeah, we can talk about that another time, but I just wanted to put that out there. It's something that is of interest. And finally, it goes back to something that Andy and I think Karen, Director Holman were alluding to, and that's communication. And I'm wondering, I think Anna, you've talked to us a little bit about this before, but I'm wondering, how are the results of the FOSM being communicated to staff at all levels?
I can start, and Stefan, if I'm missing anything, let me know. We've been having, it's almost like every at least every week or every 2 weeks, with the department managers. We meet with them once a week as a whole department team. And this seems to be almost a standing item, or at least very regular item for the last number of months. But even, we were certainly starting discussions way before that as we were looking at this project. And at the staff level, we've been having, we have all staff meetings twice a month, and that one as well, especially in the last month or two. We've been having this item as a almost standing item, if you will, with recurring updates of where things are, what's proposed, what's been accepted, the latest board approvals that happened in January 10th, and also the recommendations that are before you tonight that also relate and are very directly related to the FOSM recommendations. And there's going to be continuous conversations because the implementation process is multi-year. So that continues as well.
Yeah, we've kept staff up to date at every single step. It started with the scope of work almost a year ago. At least 100 staff members have been involved in interviews and focus groups. And then when we did provided the preliminary report, I don't even remember when that was. It was a while ago. Last fall, early fall, we did that on all staff as well. Also in November with the draft report with the 49 recommendations. And then again on the 10th and today, we went through it again with all the recommendations.
Okay.
We've been bringing staff along, as well as a lot of communication with and discussion with management team.
Great. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you very much, Paul.
Super quick follow-up to that, which is,
Mhm.
it's great that like 100 people of the staff have been involved, but have the recommendations filtered down all the way to grassroots? Is everybody aware, informed, engaged?
Well, I hope so. I mean, we've presented it to all staff several times. And also it's also incumbent on department managers to make sure that, everybody's involved with and up to date on what we're doing and such.
That's great. I just hadn't heard all staff before, so that was what I needed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, we have those the afternoon of every board meeting. Yes.
See, well, lots of good questions. I think most of them have been asked. I think just a couple follow-ups. I guess one is on the self-regulatory entitlement issue. And you mentioned there was one special district that was already doing that. Is that something that the water district or fire district, or I was just curious what that was.
Oh, I was the West Bay Sanitary District is a independent special district with territory in both San Mateo and Santa Clara County. So that checks a box with Midpeninsula. Fairly large territory, has 55,000 people. And I haven't completely verified this, but I strongly suspect that they're not getting discretionary permits every time they replace a sewer line within their district boundaries. I think they do that independently. I've never heard of sanitary districts going through a county to get an entitlement permit for sewer line replacements. It's not standard. So I think that, but I think Anna's right. I think what you'd want to do is, visit with the county and say, we wonder about the utility of these conditions of approval associated with our projects when we have an independently elected board. We have all of these specialized staff members that are doing their own sort of conditions of approval associated with these projects. And it seems like there's not a lot. We've grown as a special district over the last 50 years, and maybe it's time to revisit this. Maybe at one time there was value added, but now we're a much different organization, and maybe there's no longer value added because we're a much different organization. So I think examples like this one, this special district, might be quite valuable in making that case. And I'm sure there's others. I mean, there's hundreds of special districts within San Mateo and Santa Clara County. The county, frankly, doesn't have the resources to process entitlement permits associated. But what you do is so high profile, and it's, in many respects, is good news. Whereas when you're doing,
you can offload some of the
when you're doing water line and sewer line replacements, that's not particularly that's not necessarily all that interesting to the population. But what you're doing is quite interesting in terms of what's happening within the neighborhood. But I think you just need to have a kind of a factual based conversation about it, because I think probably when they began processing permits, it was done for good reasons. I just think that probably the facts on the ground have changed, and there's not as much value added now as maybe there once was.
Yeah,
And Anna's right. It's the kind of thing you got to do some background research. I just started doing the research, and I found an interesting exemplar, and obviously more research would need to be done, but that's the kind of thing I think where you could build the case, the argument, if you will.
Right. And there's like, I don't know how many, 26. I mean, there's many special districts, right? There's
but I know that sometimes it's nobody's fault, but sometimes this permitting can turn quasi adversarial, and that's not good. And
well, I would think that from the residents' point of view, they just need to know who to hold accountable.
Yes,
right?
of course.
Yeah. So
But you're,
that's part of
you're
challenge.
Actually, I mean, you actually have more elected representatives than the county board of supervisors. So it's quite democratic, and I just and I'd be happy to help brainstorm, how we could approach it. It is an unusual thing. I'll admit, I've worked for lots of special districts, and quite honestly, I've never encountered something quite like this. I think it's just a kind of in the beginning, I think the district may have been so small that there was a value to having the county maybe take a look at some of these projects, but those days are long gone.
No, I think that was a very useful recommendation of yours to
If I
look at
could,
that for sure.
would it be okay if I offer a quick response to that? General Counsel Hillary Stevenson. So the state laws surrounding this issue are actually quite complicated. And I did double check. What I suspected to be true is true, that the general rule is that local agencies are subject to city and county zoning and building codes. And so this is the concept that we've been grappling with, but certain local agencies and special districts are expressly exempt from those codes, and it includes utilities. So that would probably explain why the sanitary district, a water district, a purveyor of electrical transmission lines and all of that, they would be exempt from those rules. And school districts also have certain special rules that apply to them. But that's kind of a very, very brief overview of the statutory context that we're talking about, that there's a general rule and how might it apply differently to open space districts, and that the legislature didn't really account for that. but they did provide exceptions for certain other types of special districts. So I know the recommendation is to provide a legal opinion, and that's something that has, certain concepts have been in the works for a long time. So the general manager and I will work on providing that to you, and we can have a fuller discussion of that topic.
Okay.
Thanks.
Well, that definitely shed some light. So thank you. And possibly that says that we might need some special legislation that gives power to the open space districts. Yeah, that'd be great. Let's see. Well, I guess my last comment is really has to do with this whole set of discussions we've been having about pushing authority down to the organization, and it just kind of reminded me that it's always how do we also have to keep in mind how we keep attracting the world's best staff, right? So and then it's all about kind of the culture of the organization, and so it just kind of makes me think, and then I don't know who part of it's up the board, and part of it is most of it's up to our general manager, but really just to keep in mind who's the holder of the culture of the organization, and and how do we communicate that down to, and how do we attract the brightest, most curious person down at that lower level and convey that we want their ideas and energy. So that's my thought. Thank you.
Just a whale of a thorough development to present to us with almost 50 different strong suggestions about how we move forward. And pacing is going to be interesting, and reevaluating on a fairly regular basis, how well are we doing? What could we do a little better? Congratulations on doing this so well. All of those need to be part of it. Thank you very much.
Can I follow up on that? And maybe this is to Stefan. So the action item list, thank you, Annie, for putting that together. But I'm actually really interested. So how are we going to use that? And, what's the next step? Because there's, Annie presented a nice rough draft of that, or a shell, if you will, but there's a lot of details that need to be filled in there. And I'm just wondering, this is why I'm starting with you, Stefan, how do you foresee that moving forward? Because if we don't have a good implementation plan, the plan's going to sit on the shelf.
Right. So my next step is to take the entire implementation plan with all the deliverables and make sure that they're sorted by the fiscal year, and then start within the executive team and management team, start assigning responsible people, or people responsible,
right,
to start working on or implementing some of all of those recommendations, and then keep track of it, just managing it like a project. Stepping through it, keeping track of it, keep track of the timelines, deliverables. If there's any hurdles that arise, that somebody can help break the hurdles, or whether it's somebody from the executive team, or we need to go to the board for additional feedback or whatnot, but just go through them and check them off and work through it. It's it's not it's not necessarily rocket science. It's just going to have to be a discipline and cooperation and a team effort.
And just to add to that, for accountability's sake, I do foresee that we would be coming to the board, and Stefan, maybe once a year.
We've been doing it during the December retreats, and I think that worked. At least I think it worked. The board is the judge of that, but I got a positive sense of it whenever we did that, and I would like to reinstitute that, or make sure that we keep that up so that you all know exactly where we are with the deliverables, how much have we completed, how much are in progress, what's coming up. Also, we have broken it up into fiscal years, but if there's an opportunity that arises to move something forward,
Right.
we will do so.
Right.
Or if we have to move something back because of whatever reason,
Right.
we would also need to do that, to ensure that we are successful in
Right.
implementation.
Right, right. So just a quick follow-up. So I think Andy recommended that we prioritize 1, 2, and 3, and I think he gave some criteria for that.
Mhm.
And then kind of the next step was then who, what, and when, which I think you just described.
Right.
So when would we first see something like that? I would not want to wait until December. Or unless you're saying, sorry, you're going to wait until December.
Well, you have the rough cut, right? The high level cut.
But it doesn't have 1, 2, and 3, and it doesn't have people, it doesn't have, an implementation plan.
Right.
It's a shame.
Is this where we're talking about staying on the policy or going into the weeds, or I don't know. I need to develop it. We have maybe it's something to run through ABC.
Sure.
With copy to the board to have a discussion that way. Or if the full board wants to discuss it, we can.
Well, maybe I should
you know.
ask the question differently, Stefan. Could you set our expectations as to when we would see kind of that implementation plan fleshed out a little bit more as to what we could expect when, because I really like
Yeah.
your idea of, on a yearly basis, kind of coming back to that. This is where we are. This is what we're going to do.
Yeah, with the next budget process, there'll also be elements of it in there. So
Yeah.
I think that would be a good time
Yeah.
to do that, because for FY24, we have 14 FTEs. Those are already in the hopper,
Right.
and we're going to
Already
do as
checked that
many as we
box,
can
right?
as possible, right?
All right.
Pardon?
I said we already checked that box, right? They're under.
Well,
yeah.
Now we're going to work.
I know. Yeah.
The other one, the IPM program, you also checked the box because last meeting, there was approval for a consultant to start working on that. So
Yeah.
that's in progress. And then there's the entitlement one. So yes, we're already working on all of that. So then the FY25 is the next hurdle to prioritize 1, 2, 3 through, I think we have quite a long list. So I would like to fold that into the budget process or in tandem with that timeline, because there's no way I can do this by the March retreat. I'll need to involve Anna, I'll need to involve Brian and Susanna, as well as the rest of the management team, just to make sure we're all on the same wavelength.
Right.
Again, because that's the only way we can ensure success.
Right.
Because what I think might be a priority might not be exactly correct either. So we'll need a little bit of time to digest that.
Thank you.
So having not been here for the first FOSM,
I
clearly,
wasn't there either.
I know. So, clearly there are elements of that worked really well because the organization really ramped up and has done a wonderful job. But what we also felt kind of in the waning years of that FOSM was that we were perhaps a bit constrained by things that were a little bit not obsolete, but we needed a little more flexibility. So I guess I would just simply, I was having similar questions that Director Riffle did as I was thinking about how this unfolds. And I would just ask that, as you think about how you will report back to the board and how we hear about progress, that we continue to maintain enough elasticity in the process that we don't feel, squished by it, but, can continue to grow and move flexibly into the future.
I really appreciate that, and the Baker Tilly team, Andy specifically, also recognized that was one of the constraining factors of the original FOSM report, especially when it came to growth and adaptation, like standing up fire resiliency crews that were not even thought of back in 2014, 2015. So as far as that goes, the growth plan that is proposed is more flexible. Yes, the first 28, which is a couple of years out, is more defined, but then after that, it's like, in 10 years, you'll add 93 positions. So there's a lot more flexibility in that respect. And this was do the math, this was an 8-year hiatus in between the two reports.
Yeah, that's fine.
If by year 7 or 8, we feel the same way again, we'll have a FOSM 3.0, right?
Okay, any more? Perfect timing.
Can I have just a clarifying question? Because I'm sorry, but the conversation around coming back to the board with information, I was just not clear. So you have the recommendations, you have the prioritizations, so sort of the timing. You have, in broad terms, the implementation steps, broad. And we'll be coming to you with what progress we have made and how far we have moved these elements forward in December of every year. What am I missing? That's the part that I wasn't quite sure. What else we need to prepare for?
I would be happy to answer that or try to answer that question. So Andy had Baker Tilly had recommended that we have a prioritization of 1, 2, and 3. So that was my first question is, are we going to do that? And
So
you
prioritization
kind
per
of answered
year?
that already by saying, nope, we're going to do it by year.
Okay.
So but my only question was, so are we going to break that down by within the year? Here's 1, 2,
1, 2,
3, or
3
how do
by
we-
the year.
how we do
Okay.
that, number
Now
one.
I understand.
And number 2 was, and again, Baker Tilly said, well, it needs names and dates. So that was just my question is, so when are we going to start seeing that?
Okay.
So, believe me, I didn't expect it to see it by March, but I should have asked a more open-ended question of when would we see something that is a little bit more detailed. I really like, though, Stefan's answer about using that December meeting, though, as an opportunity to check back, how we doing and what are we planning on doing? So I guess the question is just between now and then.
Thank you. That helps.
Cool. Well, all I have to say is that it was a very well done report. Thank you very much. I particularly like the implementation steps, kind of laid it out, because I'm the sort of person who'd go, where do I start? So it was really nice to see that. And you gave Stefan the opportunity to list them numerically and by year. So that for me was great. So thank you very much. Great. Do we have any public comment?
President McNiven, we do not have any. Thank you.
All right. Well, the general manager's recommendation is to accept the final report of the financial and operational sustainability model refresh. May I have a motion?
I'll second.
Second? Second. Roll call vote, please.
Director Gleason,
Yes.
Director Christine Tucker,
Yes.
Director Russell,
Yes.
President McNiven,
Yes.
President Holman, Director Holman,
Yes.
Director Kishimoto,
Yes.
and Director Seer.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, well, thank you very much. The meeting is adjourned.
I have a suggestion. We have 11 minutes. I don't know if we can do it in 11 minutes, but if somebody would like to have a tour of the new suite next door, we can do that.
Why not? What? In what way? Good evening and welcome to this regular meeting of the Board of Directors of the Midpeninsula Regional Open Space District. I am Margaret McNiven, President of the Board of Directors. This meeting is now called to order. The time is 7 o'clock. This meeting is being held in person at the district's administrative office and by teleconference. Members of the public can attend and participate in the meeting in person or via Zoom. Instructions for submitting public comments are available on the meeting agenda. May we have roll call, please?
Director Gleason?
Here.
Director Christine Tucker?
Here.
Director Riffle?
Here.
President McNiven?
Yes.
Director Holman?
Yes.
Director Kishimoto?
Yes.
Director Seer? We will not at the dais, but he's present. Thank you.
So the first item is to announce out of closed session. We had a closed session on January the 11th.
And General Counsel Hillary Stevenson, my understanding is the board took no reportable action at that meeting. Thanks.
Okay. The next item is oral communications, which is for communication items not on the agenda. I have one person who would like to speak, and that is Caitlin Moraes.
That one? Okay.
Good evening. First off, I just want to congratulate you, President McNiven, on your recent election and to wish you much success in the
Thank
coming
you.
year.
Appreciate that.
And I also want to acknowledge Director Kishimoto's, all of your work in stewarding this agency's mission. And I'm having a handout go around. I just want to say that as a geographer with a background in ecology, I can honestly say that I'm very appreciative of this agency's efforts to preserve the natural resources in this region. And I'm also appreciative of the enormous responsibility that the directors and staff have to safeguard the members of the public who use these lands. I'm also aware that as you consider your responsibilities, that there is a lot of noise sometimes in the mix. And in the grand scheme of 70,000 acres, I do appreciate that it can seem like the demand for attention for this humble little 15-acre parcel can seem outsized. I'm here tonight, President McNiven, to ask you if you could put an item on the agenda in closed session to address the issue in front of you. I believe the answers to the questions on page 2 of the handout will justify the legitimacy of my request. And in the middle of the page contains the Brown Act clause that allows you to honor this request. And then on page 3, you will see the internal reason for this request. And on page 4 is the external reason for this request. And I have included page 5 as I'd like to piggyback on the comments that were made at the board meeting the other week by one of your ombuds, where he asked the board to unclog the 2 recent requests for his involvement. As your trusted board appointed mediator, there are no downsides to involving the ombud, only positives. And so that wraps up my comments. I want to hand out one more handout just for your consideration. And if you could send this down to the general manager, I would appreciate it. And thank you. Good evening.
Thank you, Caitlin. As you're aware, the Brown Act does not allow action by the Board of Directors on items not on the agenda, so thank you for your comment. The next item is adoption of the agenda. May I have a motion to adopt the agenda, please?
Move adoption of the agenda.
Second. Roll call vote, please.
Director Gleason,
Yes.
Director Christine Tucker.
Yes.
Director Ripple,
Yes.
President McNiven,
Yes.
Director Holman,
Yes.
Director Kishimoto.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 6-0.
Can I just stop a second to ask if anybody's worried about Director Sear? There he is.
Oh, yeah, yes.
Come on.
Oh.
I was worried about you. Okay, great. All right. The next item is the consent calendar, agenda items 1 through 7. Does any member of the board wish to have any item pulled from the consent calendar?
Well,
Yes.
Well, yes, I mean, I don't actually need it pulled myself. I was gonna make a very small suggested change to the appointments, which kind of is mutual with Director Gleason and myself. In the report, I'm the main member and he's the alternate, and actually currently it's the other way, and I prefer it that way, actually. So he would be the main representative, I would be the alternate. So that would be my amendment to.
And Director Kishimoto asked me about this. I don't have any
Yeah.
issue with that.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll also have just a correction. I think that what we're going to have is Director Sear continue being the representative for Valley Water.
Right.
And I think I was going to replace him, and I'm fine having Director Sear continue.
I was there this afternoon for one of their 2 meetings.
Fine with me. Are you getting this, clerk? Yeah. And then did you have one more?
Yeah, I did. Just for a matter of consistency. So my Bay Restoration Authority Board position was removed from this list, and I thought it was removed because it's not a board appointee, but there's an inconsistency with a couple of other positions. So I don't know how to rectify that in real time,
Can we just add it?
or just add it back. There's no problem with that, I guess, right, Hillary? It was there last year.
So just to clarify, the report lists assignments for board members to serve on various bodies. And at the very bottom of that, on page 3 of the list of assignments, is a list of assignments for board members who serve on external bodies. My understanding, current understanding, which maybe need to be further corrected, is that all of those outside bodies are designated or appointed. Service on those bodies is with the assignment of the board president, with the exception of, I learned a few moments ago, with the exception of the LAFCO representative, which, so I express no opinion about which outside body should be listed in this report. But it does seem that there's maybe a discrepancy that some of these aren't actually assigned by the board president. And so it's up to all of you to determine if you wish to have membership on outside bodies acknowledged in some way in this report. Perhaps that could be under a separate heading. And then I think it might be valuable in the future to also make a distinction about which of these assignments is compensable through the district's board compensation policy. And I think that's all I have from a legal perspective. I don't necessarily have an opinion about the content of this report. Hopefully that helps.
I don't know enough about government to make an opinion on this, but I do want everybody to note that Director Holman is on the San Francisco Bay Restoration Authority. We can certainly put it on this list. Would you look at it for us and fix it? Outside bodies?
The last couple of years, I sat on the, Santa Clara Valley Water Authority commission. I knew it was one of those comps. And that was one of several exterior representations that weren't compensated.
What we could do, if this is what the board would like, is make the edits, make the changes to show which of those outside bodies are appointed by our board president and thus compensable by the district, and then which outside bodies are appointed by others, and compensation is handled not by us, but that's understood.
My sense was that the commission position was appointed by our district board, which is to represent the district.
So our district clerk Maria Soria can confirm which
There's
of
a list
these.
of all the people representing various cities and other organizations.
I believe, Director Sayre, you're stating a difference, commission versus Director Holmes.
Yes.
And so he wants
yeah.
to, you want to add yours as well.
Okay.
But your Santa Clara
wants to
Valley
change.
Water
Oh,
is
yeah.
on there.
It's already on here.
And we're going to be, and that's compensable. And so that one's on there. So we're going to go ahead and then make another list of committees or commissions that are not compensable and add it.
Perfect.
Yeah, and I didn't know about the compensability of these, of this list. And I don't know where I've been. This is my 5th year on the board. And I didn't know that several of these are appointed by the board president. So,
I didn't know I'd appointed you either.
so, and I don't think anybody at Bay Restoration Authority Board knows that they're supposed to compensate us either, because that didn't happen either. But that wasn't the issue. The issue, I just thought it's like, it shows representation and accountability. And that was my purpose in bringing it up. So, and it was a change because it was there before.
Okay, well, we'll add both and we'll make it very clear
Which is which.
exactly for this year and for years moving on, so that it's clear for all
Right.
of you and the public. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anna. Okay.
So this will come back to us, or it'll just,
Either way, you can approve it with the changes.
okay.
Are there any more questions on the consent calendar?
I'll
Do we
move
have
approval
any-
of the consent
sorry.
calendar with the amendments to item 3.
Just thinking of public comment, but I don't, is there any public comment?
We do not have any. Thank you.
All right, go for it.
I'll offer a second motion.
So that we will approve it with those changes. Roll call vote, please.
Director Gleason,
Yes.
Director Christine Tucker,
Yes.
Director Riffle,
Yes.
President McNiven,
Yes.
Director Holman,
Yes.
Director Kishimoto,
Yes.
Director Sayre.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. Okay, our next item of business, item 8, is the addition of a legacy road as a new trail segment at Russian Ridge Open Space Preserve, including use designation and proposed trail name, and consideration for highlighting the presence of American badgers in the skyline area. Is there a staff report?
Okay, is it showing? Oh, cool.
Yeah, unplug it and plug it back in.
How about now?
Okay, that's just my background. Okay, can you see my presentation now? Okay. Hello, my name is Matea Ottoboni, and I'm a planner too, and today I will be presenting our new trail segment in Russian Ridge. And in a little bit, I will be joined by our natural resources specialist, Corinne Takalian. So to go over our general manager's recommendation, it is a twofold recommendation. So part of the presentation will pertain only to the first recommendation, and part of the presentation will pertain only to the second recommendation. So the first recommendation is for the board to approve the addition of a half-mile legacy road to a Vista Point as part of the trail network at Russian Ridge Open Space Preserve and designate the trail as multi-use with the proposed trail name of Bogdrift Vista Trail as supported by the Planning and Natural Resources Committee. The second part of the general manager's recommendation is to consider the Planning and Natural Resources Committee's recommendation to highlight the presence and importance of American badgers in the Skyline area for greater public awareness and, if supported, provide direction on the proposed options as detailed in the report. So an overview of what I'm going to discuss as it pertains to the first recommendation from the general manager. I'm going to go over the location of the trail, background and purpose, the description of the trail, an overview of the board's naming policy, and the proposed name. The summary of PNR feedback will actually pertain to both of the general manager recommendations. And then we'll discuss potential actions as they pertain to badgers and next steps. So to orient you on the proposed trail, it's in the northernmost part of Russian Ridge. It's directly adjacent to the Bay Area Ridge Trail and is actually a spur off of the Ridge Trail. And it is close to Skyline Boulevard and Highway 35. This is a more zoomed in view of the trail. And it's this purple line that you see that's an offshoot of the Bay Area Ridge Trail, which is the orange line. So it's about half a mile and it leads to a now demolished house site. And it's directly facing Mount Melville. So background and purpose, why are we doing this? This legacy road was formerly a driveway. And when the Smith house was demolished, obviously it was no longer needed as an access route for residential. There was signage that showed it was a private residence and the public were not allowed to use it as a trail because it was a private residence. The signage has been replaced with signs that say not a through trail. And currently there are no structures on the hilltop that could be a hazard to the public or kind of open the door for vandalism. The hilltop does have a very scenic vista. I'll show photos in the next slide. That's very attractive for members of the public. And they have actually been using it. So staff from our Skyline Field Office has reported that people are using the trail. And because there's not a great reason to close it, we would just like to formally add it to the trail network, put it on our maps, and give it a name. So at this time, we are just proposing a new name. We're not proposing any trail improvements or amenities beyond signage updates. So the trail itself is about a half a mile, and it's a former driveway, so it's gravel surface. It's in pretty good condition. It's about 12 feet wide, and it's an out and back trail. So full out and back is in 1 mile. And on top of the vista is a 360-degree view of the Bay Area. So on a clear day, you can see to the ocean, to San Francisco, and across the bay. It's a very attractive place for trail users, and it's easily accessible from the Bay Area Ridge Trail. The surrounding trail uses include hiking, biking, and equestrian uses. So I'm not going to read the whole board policy, but as it pertains to naming, we've sought names that have either geographical, botanical, or zoological identification. And so through the process of selecting a name, we solicited feedback from our Skyline Field Office staff because they are the most familiar with the preserve. So we got a number of names from them. We also consulted with our Natural Resources Department and our management team. And then we presented a number of names to the PNR with a preferred alternative. And the name that was preferred by the PNR and is being presented to you today is Bogdrift Vista. So fog drift is a fairly unique phenomenon that can only happen with a couple of geographic factors. One is being proximate to the ocean, and the other is having a high ridge line. So this is a very common phenomenon that we see in the skyline area because of the high ridge line and watching the fog and the clouds drift over the lower topography. So the vista part of it really notes that this trail leads to somewhere scenic and somewhere that's more of a destination. So these are all photos taken from different parts of Russian Ridge Open Space Preserve. So this is something that could be witnessed from our vista point. So to summarize the feedback that we got from our PNR committee, one of the main points was that, especially of having vista in the name, made this trail name very appropriate for the location. The trail itself, it's quite short for one of our trails, and it's nothing that's particularly special about the trail, but the vista is what's really going to draw people. So it's important to members of the PNR committee to have vista in the name. There were also some questions from PNR members about the status of some rock outcroppings at the top of the hill. And so a member of our engineering and construction team confirmed that those were preserved during the demolition of the Smith House and that they're in good condition. So as I said, we presented a couple of names to the PNR committee. And one of our alternative names was Badger's Byway. And this struck up a lot of discussion with our PNR committee. And it really led to kind of a desire to how could we highlight badgers in the preserve, in this preserve or others. So I'm going to invite our natural resources specialist, Corinne Tocatlian, to tell you why badgers are important.
Good evening. My name is Corinne Tocatlian. I'm a resource management specialist 2 with the Natural Resources Department. I'm very happy to be here today to discuss our desire to highlight this very special species that we have here in our preserves. So members of the public are often unaware that badgers are present in the peninsula and in our district preserves. So I think this gives us a great opportunity to engage with our community about this, this very interesting species. They are essential members of their ecosystems that provide many benefits to others. They are charismatic, they have very unique personalities, and they are also a species of special concern, and so they require a very mindful conservation management approach. Badgers occur in grassland habitats and are, interestingly, very rarely seen in person. So we tend to track them instead by looking for their sign on the landscape, their burrows, and their dens, and we also track them using tools like wildlife cameras. A recent badger study managed by the Natural Resources Department found several key findings that are illustrated in this figure. The first is sort of a qualification of habitat quality types throughout the peninsula and throughout our preserve. So the green colors show very high quality badger habitat, and the blue shows very low quality badger habitat. So you can see high quality habitat is sort of restricted to the coastal range. And then it comes across the 84 corridor, and then there's another narrow section along the eastern ridge. Another finding was, well, also the figure shows black dots, which represent locations of badger and their burrows and their dens over time. And so we immediately saw this sort of concentrated clustering of badger activity, specifically in this skyline area. And our study showed that more than 50% of badger observations were clustered in 6 core district preserves in that skyline area. And finally, on the figure, those white swaths show what we call pathways of movement or badger linkages. And so these are areas, sort of badger highways throughout the peninsula. And so we find several of these linkages throughout their habitats, but also, again, clustered very much in that skyline ridge area. So coming back to the staff identified several potential actions that would fulfill the board's recommendation to highlight this very charismatic species in our preserves. All of these are meaningful actions, and each have their own costs and impacts to staff time. So the selection, whatever they are, would need to be integrated into future work plans. The first possible action is kind of coming back to this name Badger's Byway. So considering renaming a section of the Bay Area Ridge Trail, which is currently located in Russian Ridge, and it's currently called simply the Ridge Trail, or pursuing a new future trail in other important badger areas like La Honda, the Hawthorns area in Windy Hill, or Cloverdale Ranch. So the estimated cost for this action would be somewhere between $800 to $1,200, and that would cover the installation and replacement of trail directional signage and would require a moderate level of staff time. And the estimated time frame for this action would be 9 to 12 months for renaming of the existing Ridge Trail, or several years to wait for those potentially new trail sections in the other areas listed there. Another action is the creation and installation of an interpretive panel that would focus on the badgers in a key location. And the estimated cost for this would be $5,000 to $8,000 and would require a significant amount of staff time. And the estimated time frame here is 12 or more months. Another potential action is the creation of an Esri story map, which is a web-based experience that integrates not only a text narrative, but also maps and pictures and videos that sort of all come together to create a very comprehensive story. So this would be a creative way to tell the story about badgers in district preserves. And that would be paired with social media posts, a QR code that could be placed on our district webpage. And that code could also be featured on some hard copy signage that we have in our signboards at our preserves. And finally, the last option that staff identified was to provide a public-focused presentation, something like a lunch and learn that could be offered to members of the public, and that would help, that would be given by natural resources staff, and that would also be paired with social media and web content. So the estimated cost here, the estimated cost for the story map and those components would be zero cost because it would be done internally. That would require moderate staff time, and timeline there is 6 to 8 months. And then finally, the public presentation would be minimal staff time, and then timeline there is 3 to 6 months. Okay, so focusing on some of these actions, considering the naming of a trail, again, coming back to this lovely name Badgers Byway. I just wanted to show the figure on the right shows the actual trail segment through Russian Ridge. Again, this is named just simply Ridge Trail. And the figure on the left is a zoomed in section of our study map that identified a very important linkage here for badgers. So again, we're talking about badger highways through this area. And that was also field validated with our black dot observations of badgers and their dens. So basically, this is just to show this is this is a trail that has known badger use and occupancy. It's part of that core skyline habitat. And so this would be a very aptly named and appropriately named trail to feature badgers in this area. The other locations listed below, La Honda Creek, Hawthorns, and Cloverdale, these also contain very high quality badger habitat. These are wonderful locations to feature badgers as well. It just sort of depends on the desired timeline for the action. These are examples of existing interpretive panels that the district has created and installed in areas like Mount Eminem, Russian Ridge, and La Honda. So a badger interpretive panel could look similar to something like this and feature badgers entirely. Public education and awareness for any species within their habitat is very important for stewardship and protection, but it is especially important for badgers because, like I said, many folks are not even aware that they occur here. So placing an interpretive panel that tells a compelling story, I think, is very a valuable option, especially in these sort of highlighted green, high-quality areas. And just a reminder here that staff capacity within the interpretation and education program is limited. So the timeline for this action is somewhat longer than some of the other actions that could be taken. The story map and social media components could also increase awareness and interest in the species. Again, the focus would sort of be the story map component here, which could be updated periodically with new information, pictures and videos. because it is a sort of web-based virtual feature. A lot of this information can be adapted fairly quickly. And personally, I think this is a really valuable option because virtual platforms already have a very wide reach. And also the story map enables the sharing of pictures and videos, I think, which are especially important for a species like badger that is very difficult to see in person. So it could kind of facilitate that engagement with our community and the support for the species. The district currently manages a badger webpage, which is focused on the study itself, but this could be updated to just share more general information, the same way that we offer for coyotes, for example. And that webpage could also feature the story map and a QR code for other web-based content. Public Affairs Department staff routinely make social media posts about different species that can be found in our preserves. So we could do something like that, similar for badgers, with input from natural resources staff. And an independent social media post would require sort of the least amount of staff time and effort because much of that content is already available and has already been created for other reasons. And finally, the last potential action is to provide a virtual presentation to our public. In 2022, a lunch and learn presentation was given to only staff that focused on the badger study, but we can certainly provide something like this again and make it available to members of our public as well, provide a recording, post it on our webpage with associated social media content, if that is desired. We could also consider giving another virtual event highlighting badgers in our preserve, similar to the Secret Life of Badgers virtual event that we provided, that I gave during the pandemic shutdown. So again, this could be recorded and provided as well. So with that, I think I'll hand it back over to Matea. Thank you.
Okay, so just to summarize our next steps for each of our recommendations. So circling back to recommendation 1, if the board approves, the trail will be added to the official trail network in Russian Ridge. And then the sign coordinator will update trail directional signage and mapping once the board considers it. And for recommendation 2, the general manager will determine appropriate timing and programming of subsequent work to highlight badgers in the Skyline area, depending on what the board decides. So here's our general manager's recommendation again. And now we'll move on to questions and discussion.
Any questions? Yeah, Zoe, then Kurt. You go, Zoe.
Thank you very much. Really great presentation. I love these names. And I love all of the things for badgers. So, but was that the idea that all of those things would be done, or that we were to pick and choose, or how is that?
Pick and choose.
Oh, I see. Oh. Oh, like, I see, okay. Door A or door B or, not all of the above.
All of the above are wonderful, but
Okay.
we have to kind of peter our capacity, per species to certain degrees, because we have so many species and habitats that we want to feature and educate the public about. So I would recommend 1. But if there's an incredibly strong desire for more than 1, you can consider that. Just know that it will be additional time, and we need to fold that into our work plan. So it's, there are trade-offs in terms of where you would like to put the capacity, but that's something for you to consider.
Okay, thank you. Another question then, with regard to the Ridge Trail, is there a precedent set already for renaming a section of the Ridge Trail within one of our preserves? Or would it be Ridge Trail, also AKA Badgers Byway?
Do you want to speak to it, or do you want me to?
Yeah, so the recommendation would be to change the name. The Ridge Trail corridor is already designated and noted within on site with the Ridge Trail medallions.
Yes.
So that's already present, as well as on our maps, we have a special designation that shows the Ridge Trail corridor. So it is still very much highlighted and called out as part of the Ridge Trail corridor. other locations where we have the Ridge Trail corridor, we have different names for the trails. So wouldn't be unprecedented to change the name. And
Mhm.
many other parks and open spaces, they have different names for those corridors as well.
Okay.
And I actually checked, this is the only section of the Ridge Trail, even within our preserves, that's called just Ridge Trail. Every other section of Ridge Trail has a unique name.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Yes.
I was just wondering if the committee could
Yes.
comment. You all.
Some very thorough discussion on the committee, particularly when we got to what do we do with calling this Badger thing. Badger Highway has a real kind of lyrical attraction. However, badgers don't exist just in that segment of trail or just at that vista point. They're throughout the corridor. And the other one is the likelihood of a guest going up the trail and even discovering a paw print or a burrow pretty slight, or even be able to recognize it. So it seemed to us that since this was predominantly a vista point and an opportunity to get a feel for one of the high points in the ridge, the fog vista just really appealed because that's what it is. It's not necessarily going to go find fog, but you may be above the fog, which is a really enticing kind of attraction to a particular area. So the committee wrestled with the naming and ultimately came up with the recommendation that we brought forward to you. Fog Vista Trail and some other way to highlight the fact of badgers along this corridor seems to make more sense to the committee.
I didn't hear the second part of that, Jed. So I was just wondering, did the committee have a recommendation on general manager's recommendation number 2? Because there's, I think, 4. Sorry?
That wasn't before us. We came up with the idea of let's find a way to recognize and highlight badgers. So these recommendations that are before us now about these options was not before us at the committee.
Okay. All right.
Right. And so we brought this forward to all of you because it was a suggestion from the committee to highlight the badgers, which was not part of the original GM recommendation. So we're bringing forward that
I see.
for you to consider whether, yes, you do want to proceed with that. And that's why then, if so, we have these options.
Got it. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, I think Director Sears' comments were a good summary of the discussion we had. I just wanted to mention one other thing about the trail segment itself. I think it's a really nice addition. It's at the end of Russian Ridge where you're just kind of going out to the road. So previously there was nothing sort of interest there if you were going out and back. And it gives you now a nice destination to go up that hill. And it's actually very, very beautiful up there. I think we had nice pictures here, but it doesn't do it justice. So I would definitely recommend everybody, if you get a chance, go up there and see it. I think really nice addition to the system.
Well, I for one want to really express my appreciation to the staff because this was not what was intended when you brought this to us. It was like, pick one of these. And I significantly want to thank you all for branching out and recognizing and taking under your wing the recognition of the badgers. And I think it's really important that we do something like this. Sometimes the unseen are the underrepresented. And so I think it's incumbent on us as a district, when we know that these badgers exist, to highlight their presence so people can appreciate that they do exist and they're part of our ecology. Thank you. I mean, I really am appreciative. I really am. I agree with Craig about number 1. If wishes were horses, I would like to do 1, 2, and 3. if wishes were horses. I don't know where other people stand on that. But at the very least, I would like to do 1 and 3. I'm not leaning towards number 4 because I think it's one and done and out of people's minds, except for those that are there. So I would really focus on 1 and 3. And I guess the other thing is like interpretive panels. Oh, and by the way, about number 1, yes, about Russian Ridge, not the future trail segments, because those don't seem to be following where the badgers are most present. Not the Hawthorns or Cloverdale. It doesn't seem like to me, but I think the Ridge Trail segment would be good. The interpretive panels, it's not clear what a key location would be, and it has a cost and will take significant staff time. So I'm not quite sure where that signage would go. Maybe staff can inform us on that. But I think 1 and 3 are the most long-lasting and most publicly visible.
Well, I definitely support the trail naming and that motion. And on the Badger, Mr. Badger, Mr. and Mrs. Badger. I mean, yeah, I mean, I love to do all 4 as well, but yeah, I mean, it seems like, yeah, we should be able to do 1, 3, and possibly if you do 4, I mean, it sounds like it's going to be minimal staff time, and you can put the recording on the website as well. So I would push for 1, 3, and 4.
Ditto. 1, 3, and 4 for me.
Don't want to be contrary. But I learned about the badgers from the sign at the parking lot. Have you seen these badgers? With this cute picture, and of course it drew my attention, and now I know a fair amount about. I went home and so I'm quite happy with just a big notice at the parking lot entrance to the trails myself. But I'm not against the others. You know what I'm saying? I just want you to be aware that those little signs at the parking lot on the boards are pretty effective, in my opinion. It was a notice. Have you seen these badges? It was lovely. That face is to die for.
I'm very glad if I can just respond to that. So we do that was a paper flyer in the signboard at the entrance. So we have those posted at most of our Skyline Preserve signboards, and we do plan to keep those in the signboards. It's basically a call for the public to report if they've seen a badger. So we certainly want to continue receiving those reports. So that will remain for sure.
Yeah, it was a paper flyer now that I think about it.
Question is, how many badgers have I seen? I personally, 0. Still. Reported we had, I think in the realm of 200 to 300 observations, but that was over a very long period of time, and that came from several databases. So we're still trying to estimate the actual population size in the peninsula. So we're still working toward that number, which will be very, very valuable to have once we do have it.
Yeah, I saw them and I knew what they were. So, yeah. Director Gleason.
Yeah, I also like all these ideas, so I would be fine with any of them. I would also say we wouldn't necessarily have to do everything right away. So, if we decide not to do some of these things, we could always keep them in mind for future. We will have different lunch and learn over time. At some point, we could bring this topic up, or if there's a particular outreach that we want to do at some point, we could pick one of these things if we didn't choose to do it now. So I think, I would be okay with any of these options, but I guess if it were up to me, I also like 1 and 3.
Okay. Public comment?
We do not have any public comments. Thank you.
Can I have guidance? Should we just do one first and then two, or should we do? Is that all right? So let's approve the general, let's have a motion for the general manager's recommendation to approve the addition of a half-mile legacy road to the Vista Point as part of the trail network at Russian Ridge Open Space Preserve and designate the trail as multi-use with the proposed trail name of Bog Drift Vista as supported by the Planning and Natural Resources Committee.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call
A
vote.
lot of enthusiastic.
Yeah. Roll call vote, please.
Sure, might confirm who was second. Was it Seer or Holman? Okay, thank you. We'll go with Seer. Great. Director Gleason?
Yes.
Director Christine Tucker?
Yes.
Director Riffle?
Yes.
President McNiven?
Yes.
Director Holman?
Yes.
Director Kishimoto? And Director Seer.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, on the next recommendation, which is, can I go ahead? Yeah. Consider the Planning and Natural Resources Committee's recommendation to highlight the presence and importance of American badgers in the Skyline area for public awareness, and if supported, provide direction on the proposed options as detailed in this report. And I think what I heard was 1, 2, and 3 at your 1, 3, and 4, 1, 3, and 4, but leave the paper flyers up.
But you should clarify on one, is it rename the part of the Ridge Trail
Oh.
or do you look for a future?
I don't think that's this. Oh, and the report. Director Holman, would you restate the motion, please?
So I would move that we rename a section of the Bay Area Ridge Trail, currently called Ridge Trail, within Russian Ridge, Badgers Byway. And this would be action item number 1 on table 2 in the staff report. And that we also recommend number 3 and number 4. So in other words, the ESRI story map webpage with information about badgers, and a public-focused lunch and learn presentation by Natural Resources. So 1, 3, and 4 in table 2 of the staff report. And 1 again is to rename that section of Ridge Trail.
I'll second that.
Roll call vote, please.
Director Gleason?
Yes.
And Director Christine Tucker?
Yes.
Director Riffle?
Yes.
President McNiven?
Yes.
Director Holman?
Yes.
Director Kishimoto?
Yes.
Director Seer?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 7-0.
And again, with gratitude to staff.
Great idea. All right, the next board business is item 9, Bear Creek Redwoods North Parking Area, existing conditions, site opportunity and constraints analysis, and conceptual design alternatives. May we have a staff report?
Still me.
Still you.
Okay, can you see my screen? Okay, hi, again, I'm Matea Ottoboni, and now I'm talking about the Bear Creek Redwoods North Parking Area Conceptual Design Alternatives. I am joined tonight by my colleagues Alex Harker and Jared Hart, who have also been working on this project. So the general manager's recommendation for this project is to accept conceptual design alternative number 2 for a new vehicle and horse trailer parking area at Bear Creek Redwoods Open Space Preserve, which is the Planning and Natural Resources Committee's preferred option to proceed into environmental review and design development. So an overview of the agenda for this project. I'll give a project overview and background, discuss technical studies, discuss our opportunities and constraints, give a summary of public and PNR feedback, discuss our conceptual design alternatives, go over next steps, and then open it to discussion. So to orient you on the project location, as you may have inferred from the title, it's in Bear Creek Redwoods. It's in the northernmost part of the preserve, and it's an area between gates BCO1 and BCO2. So as some background, this was called for in the preserve plan, which was approved in January of 2017. The preserve plan included an environmental impact report, or EIR, which provided CEQA coverage for this project. Originally, the north parking area was called for in phase 3 of implementation, but due to a variety of factors was expedited and moved into phase 2, mainly because of high parking demand at the Alma College lot and a simplification of scope at the Bear Creek Stables parking. So on the right side of the screen, you can see a couple of conceptual drawings that were included in the preserve plan about the north parking area. So it was intended in the preserve plan to provide approximately 50 vehicle parking spaces and approximately 8 horse trailer parking spaces. Originally, it called for reverse trailer parking. So horse trailers would drive in and then back into their spots. And it called for a tiered parking area, as you can see on the top design, which shows high level and low level. So for our scope, we are proposing approximately the same number of parking spaces. We're also working with the phase 2 trails team to propose a connection to our phase 2 trails. And we're leaving the door open for transportation demand strategies, or TDMs, because of recent efforts on other projects in the district, just leaving our design flexible that if we needed to incorporate those strategies in the future, that we could. So this is our project study area from above. It's a more zoomed in view. So this area was identified during the preserve planning process, mainly because of a traffic study that was conducted. The traffic study was looking at areas with safe line of sight. If you've ever driven on Bear Creek Road, you know it's quite windy. And finding an area where it's straight enough to provide safe public access, it's a little bit of a challenge. So 2 areas were identified in that original traffic study. One is where the Alma College parking lot is today, and the other place was this site. So there were a couple of factors with this site that also make it fairly friendly to put a parking area. So you can see from overhead, it's mostly already cleared of trees, and it's already been disturbed. So it does also have that safe line of sight. And compared to a lot of areas within Bear Creek Redwoods, it's relatively flat, but I'll get into it more later. So as I said, we've already had some technical studies done because this was part of an environmental impact report. A lot has already been done on this specific area. And then some of them will be redone to both confirm our findings and just make sure that everything is fully studied and that we're being very thorough. So some of these studies were previously conducted and will be re-upped just to make sure that they're still consistent. So those are botanical resources, a topographic survey, cultural resources study, a traffic study, geotech study, and a wildlife study. So now I'm going to go into our existing conditions for the site. So this is a view from the southeast corner. So in selecting an area of this open grassy area, we considered a couple of factors. So we consulted with our natural resources department to find an area that would have the least ecological impact. And we also consulted with our visitor services department to ensure that we could find an area that was going to be easy to patrol and easy to access for safety vehicles. So this area is about 2.5 acres. As you can see, there are some slopes to it. It's not completely flat, but it is mostly cleared of trees. So it's already been fairly disturbed. And as you can see, there are surrounding hills, and something that we do want to take into account when we design this parking area is really maintaining a sense of place. We want to really highlight the beautiful area that this is in. We don't want a parking lot that really sticks out, and we want to maintain the sanctity of our visual resources and our aesthetics in the area. So going into a little bit more detail on our opportunities and constraints. So this shows the existing disc line. This is maintained by our field staff in order for fire protection, so this area is already regularly fairly disturbed. These are existing access roads, and it would also be the future location of our phase 2 trails. So this parking lot's very well located to connect to trails. So this is our line of sight. So this is something that we heard both in our PNR committee and from the public, was that the visual component of this is very, very important. So from the roadway, it's kind of hard to tell from the overview. Oops. Part of the parking area kind of linear aspect is shielded by trees. So you wouldn't be able to see part of it from the road because there is fairly heavy tree cover on Bear Creek Road. So this section denoted by these white lines is the area that you could see from the road. So our topographic survey showed that there are different areas of varying slope. So these green circles represent areas of fairly flat slope of 0 to 10%. These show areas of more moderate slopes from 10 to 20%. And these red circles show areas of a steeper slope of 20 to 50%. So something just to keep in mind is the location of these red circles, where they are on this map. And when we do have areas of steeper slope, it's not impossible to build on, but when you do build in steeper areas, you do have to have more engineering considerations in order to make it something that's seismically safe and that's feasible. So that means more retaining walls and more grading. So that's just something to keep in mind. So this is a summary of public engagement that we have conducted for this project. So we teamed up with the BCR Phase 2 Trails team when they did some public outreach this past spring. So we did a virtual stakeholder meeting with mountain bike interest groups and equestrian interest groups because we were working in the same preserve, in the same area of the preserve around the same time. So we wanted to get a lot of those interest groups kind of in the same meeting because our projects are connected. So in the same vein, we also did a public workshop with that team at the Los Gatos Adult Recreation Center last spring. And then this past September, we went before the Planning and Natural Resources Committee. So from those interactions with the public, we've gained a couple of key themes of feedback. So I've split them into opportunities and constraints. So one opportunity that was identified by members of the public was, is there a possibility for an alternate location for this parking lot? We also got comments about this is a good opportunity to have more interpretive elements, specifically elements that highlight maybe the estate period or natural resources or geologic resources, something kind of other than the Alma College history. We also got a lot of support from equestrians about the opportunity to have pull-through trailer parking and in and out trailer parking, as opposed to our reverse-in trailer parking that was originally shown in the preserve plan. So some of the constraints that we heard about were visual impacts. So we actually heard both sides of the coin, where some members of the public really didn't want this parking lot to be visible from Bear Creek Road, and other members of the public wanted it to be visible from Bear Creek Road for emergency access. It was also identified concerns about habitat loss. So building this parking area in this grassy area would result in loss of habitat. Removing trees does result in loss of habitat. And do keep in mind that we have to balance both kind of sides of the district mission of public access and protection of natural resources. So we've considered both of those things very carefully. We also received comments about risk to safety due to increase in users, both with fire, with crowding, things like that. So to summarize feedback that we got from our PNR committee, we got the comment from them that we did a good job of incorporating public feedback on our designs to really respond, especially to the aspects of the visual landscape and providing that pull-through trailer parking for equestrians. We had a request for graphic representation of potential visual impacts. So in a few slides, I will show you that. We also got a request for additional information on infeasible alternative locations. So now I'm going to go into some locations that we didn't consider, as alternative locations. So we heard from members of the public about what about having parking at BCO1. So BCO1 is the first gate on Bear Creek Road, and there is an informal kind of gravel lot located at BCO1, and that's currently used for maintenance, for staging, and for some permitted volunteer activities. So one of the main reasons why BCO1 wasn't considered is in that original traffic study, it doesn't have safe line of sight. So putting a driveway there would just be infeasible because we couldn't put public access at a place where many, many cars couldn't drive safely in and out of the road. We don't want to make a risk to public safety. Additionally, it could only accommodate about 20 vehicles and no horse trailers in its current state. And there would be an impact to the activities that are already using BCO1. So for that reason, just entrance at BCO1 was not considered further. We also got the request of what if we put a driveway at the proposed north parking area where there is safely identified line of sight and routed it down through the preserve to use BCO1. So we looked into it to see if this could be feasible. So as I mentioned before, BCO1 itself does have some size constraints. And in the preserve plan, it called for 40 to 50 parking spots and approximately 8 horse trailer parking spots at the north parking area. So this doesn't meet the brief. And to provide a driveway between the north parking area and BCO1, it's about 1/4 mile. And so to put in a 22-foot wide road there requires a lot of grading, and it requires a lot of tree removal. It's a lot more impervious area, and it's a pretty steep slope in that area. There's a 75-foot vertical drop from the north parking area to BCO1. So looking at, if we did more research into the engineering constraints, we're assuming lots of grading, lots of retaining walls, and it would be difficult to put a driveway there. So for all of those reasons, we didn't consider relocating this parking effort to BCO1. Additionally, BCO1 was not covered under CEQA in our whole EIR process. So if we were to change the location of this, it would push our timeline back considerably. So now I'm going to get into alternatives that we are considering. So this is our design option 1. If you remember back to our preserve plan diagram, this looks very similar. It's a very similar shape, and it's in the same kind of layout and spot. So this would be a tiered parking lot. So this top aisle would be for cars, and it would accommodate 50 vehicle parking spaces. It would have a circular circulation pattern. And in this lower area would be the equestrian spots. So these would be pull-through parking lot to accommodate the requests of the equestrian community. And we would provide 8 spots. Additionally, this parking area would include 2 ADA spots, and we would try to locate those in the flattest part of the preserve to meet ADA in the easiest way. So a couple of things to consider with this alternative as it pertains to opportunities and constraints. So those visual lines go right across this parking lot, and it would be very visible from Bear Creek Road. So when driving along the road, this would be something that would be harder to miss. And also remembering that these areas in kind of this lower left-hand corner are of the steepest slopes. That's our 20 to 50% slopes. So to make a flat parking area in this location would require a lot more engineering input. So we're going to have approximately 950 cubic yards of grading and approximately 1,000 linear feet of retaining walls. So to make it stable and flat in this area, it's just more input and it's a higher cost. So moving on to alternative 2, this option tried to address some of those concerns that we found when designing option 1. So option 2 really, first and foremost, takes advantage of flatter parts of the topography of this area. So these are in areas of our more gentle to moderate slopes. So it provides less engineering input. So what you see in the numbers is that that's less grading. So it's 600 cubic yards instead of 950 cubic yards, and it's 55 linear feet of retaining walls instead of 1,000 linear feet of retaining walls. So when you have less engineering input, it's a lower cost. So this parking lot would have entry right on Bear Creek Road, right in that safe line of sight. And then as you enter, you can drive through in a circular pattern. The equestrian parking spaces are these spaces on either side of this center oval, and they're marked by the number 2. So there would be 6 total equestrian spots, and they would be pull-in. As you can see, they have a slanted entrance so that equestrians could pull in and pull out, and there would be sufficient space to park 2 trailers kind of head to tail on either of these lane spots, and then cars would drive in between. And in the center part of the oval, that would be the equestrian staging area. So people can gather there with their horses. The parking area for cars are these 2 satellite lots. So within these lots, it makes circulation a little bit easier. And each of these satellites would accommodate 23 or 24 vehicles. So another thing to consider with these lots is if we did want to consider transportation demand management strategies in the future, such as reservable parking or carpool parking, having these kind of separated lots could make that an easier thing. Another thing to consider is we're putting ADA in a flatter and more accessible part of the preserve. So in both alternatives, we will meet ADA. It's just going to be easier to meet ADA in this alternative. So we heard a lot of comments about the views and what you can see from the road, and some saying we don't want to see the parking lot from the road, and some saying we would like to see the parking lot from the road. So here are a couple of spots along Bear Creek Road and the direction that the view is facing. And you can see the circles of where the parking areas are. So I'm just going to flip through these and just see what you can see from the road and where there are trees and where there are not. So as you get further east on this road, there is more tree cover and there's also this big dirt berm. So you wouldn't necessarily be able to see into the parking area if you are traveling, say, from Highway 17 towards Alma College. So we've gotten a request to add more moon charts to our board reports. So these moon charts, a fully filled in circle shows greater alignment with the criteria, and a less filled in circle shows less alignment with the criteria. So in comparing value versus cost, option 1, we said it provides moderate value because it does meet all the criteria set out in the preserve plan. Option 2 provides high value for the cost. For option 1, we're estimating a cost between $3.5 and $4 million, depending on when construction would happen. And then option 2, we would project between 1.8 and 2 million, also depending on time. So option 2 is that better value for the cost. For minimizing impact to the site, option 1, as I've said, there would be more impacts to visual resources because it is more visible from the roadway. Option 2, it does have some impacts to visual resources, but it's less and there's less grading. Integration of TDMs. In the future, we could integrate TDMs. And just a caveat to that, any transportation demand management strategies, whether it be shuttles or carpool or anything, would have to be evaluated at a future time and would have to be studied very thoroughly to ensure that it meets the needs and doesn't have outsized impacts. So option 1, we could achieve some TDMs with minor modification to the parking area. With option 2, we just found it easier because of the satellite lots. So alignment with project goals and policies. Option 1 does a pretty good job. It meets the objectives of the preserve plan. It's very similar to the vision in the preserve plan, but it does result in some impacts, especially to those visual resources. And option 2, we felt hit most of our targets and we filled in the circle completely because it got all of our public use and facilities goals and objectives and minimized the impacts where possible. And then alignment with public comments. Option 1 supported public interest for pull-through trailer parking, but did have some visual impacts. And then option 2, it supports public interest with pull-through trailer parking and has some visual impact resources. So for our next steps in project schedule, this is the whole zoomed out version of our entire project schedule. And this is what we have left. So right here, we're at the far left of this diagram is the board meeting. That's right now. So once we select a preferred design, which we're hoping is tonight, then we are going to continue with our conceptual design. Next step is hiring a design consultant to get that design more finalized. In the next calendar year, we're going to work on finalizing our design, our technical studies, confirming CEQA. Into 2026, we're going to start with our construction documents and permitting, and then hope to go to construction in 2027. I will say this is kind of a best case scenario timeline. So if we hit major delays like this past year, really unprecedented stormy years, this is the kind of project that it would be best to start really early in the construction season and not start really late in the fall. So if our schedule does get pushed back, it would likely need to wait a construction season. So that's just something to keep in mind, but we're doing our best to keep this on schedule and keep it moving forward. So to circle back to our general manager's recommendation, it is to accept the conceptual design alternative number 2 for a new vehicle and horse trailer parking area at Bear Creek Redwoods, which is the Planning and Natural Resources Committee's preferred option, and to proceed into environmental review and design development. Any questions?
I always start with this. When would we have an opportunity to hear from the committee? It's okay, Steve. Always love to hear from the experts.
We hear from the committee.
You know,
We did a thorough analysis of this and of the different options. We did a thorough analysis of this and thoroughly wrestled with option 1, 2, and 3. And although 2 is not perfect, it's a whole lot satisfactory in terms of objectives that were attempted to be covered by the choices. So that's why we're bringing it forward to the full board with our recommendation.
Okay. I've had some other questions, but any other committee?
Yeah, I think we, I believe we all felt that option 2 was preferred. But we felt that because there was a lot to look at here, a lot to consider, we ought to bring forward both options. I think, I felt like the staff put together a really creative option with option 2 to address some of the issues that the public had brought up. I know a number of people spoke to me at some of the outreach sessions that were done, the in-person one, and then other people spoke to me offline, really concerned about the meadow there. They said, this is a very nice place. There's a nice view across it. You get a really nice view, up towards the summit there. And they were concerned about messing that up. So I think the staff came up with a really creative option of preserving that view more. And then that also turned out to be better in terms of, cost and grading and so forth, right? There are some trade-offs, more trees cut down, but I think it was great that they put that option on the table. And then the other thing I wanted to say is that I really appreciate the staff looking into the, I know they had already looked into the option of using BCO1, but that was something that came up from many people in the public that, oh, you have a parking lot there, you use it as a parking lot, why not just use that? And as you presented, there are some real constraints. It's very, very difficult to meet our goals there. And I think having that information helped to address that issue with folks from the public who kept bringing that up. So, yeah, that's it.
I was not able to make that committee meeting, so I have nothing to say about that meeting.
Can I go with my question?
Yes, go ahead.
Great. Thank you, committee, for doing that. I'm going to be supporting option 2, but I do have 2 questions, and they're kind of equestrian oriented, and a member of our public probably is going to be asking the same questions. First of all, could you put the map of option 2 up there? Several members of the public commented on using those spaces for visitor or for visitor buses or for that. And I said the same thing about Rancho, that, in the weekends or whatever, we're using the equestrian parking for shuttles and so on. So I get that parking real estate is valuable, but on the other hand, I don't want to show up with my horse trailer and not be able to park. And I think that's what the public was telling us too. So unfortunately, you can't go down the road and park your horse trailer on the side of the road or whatever. So staff, could you comment on that trade-off? Or what are you thinking about that?
So we're not committing to any TDM measures at this time.
Okay.
So as you know, shuttles have been explored in a
Yeah.
couple of other preserves
Sure.
for feasibility.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
you may know that that's a very long process.
Right.
So if that was something that if demand was not being met by the parking lot itself.
right.
And there was just too much demand for Bear Creek and we needed to explore other options.
Right.
We'd have to look into it really thoroughly, and the equestrian aspect would absolutely be something that would be studied of would this impact existing trail users?
Right.
And so we're not proposing to just, without any study, pull in a whole bunch of buses and take up all the equestrian spots.
Okay. All right.
So that if that was something that the board wanted to see in the future,
Right.
we'd have to look into it really thoroughly.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Good. I like that answer. The second is kind of a matter of design. And I was just wondering, how wide is the is the public is kind of pulling between horse trailers, right? And I just, how much room is there going to be for the equestrians? Because most equestrians that I know and is they tie their horses to the side of the trailer. And so is there enough room for all that to happen?
Yes. Alex, do you have measurements or can you speak to that?
I don't have comment though. Hi, Alex Harker, Engineering and Construction Capital Project Manager too. Generally, our drive aisles are about 24 feet wide. I would say I don't have the exact measurements, and so I don't want to speak on the record about what is exactly shown here and whether there's ample space for both parking and horses tied to the side of the trailers. But I would say that it's something where we could incorporate that feedback into future design iterations.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Just maybe a point of feedback is El Corte de Madera has that kind of similar parallel parking or pull-through parking, and I've used that probably a dozen times.
Okay, and that's effective?
And yeah, because what I do is get over as far as I can to one side, and even though the horse is still kind of sticking out a little bit into the traffic pattern, I have to admit, at first it made me uncomfortable, but I've never had an issue up there. So I would say no less than what we gave people at the El Corte de Madera parking lot, just as a
Okay,
sample
great.
point.
That's awesome feedback.
I mean, Mike might want to comment on that, but that's just the thing that kind of jumped out at me on this one. And,
Thank you.
And then the third point, if I could just, how, and Brian, maybe you're going to want to comment on this, is what about patrol issues? Because I know when we have constructed parking lots in the past, rangers were a little concerned about tucking them too far back in because they couldn't get into, easy visibility from the road. So they're kind of pro and con to that, but I would love to hear, Brian, thanks. Just, do you have any concerns about this 1 versus 2?
So, I mean, that is a standard public safety thing, that high visibility reduces crime.
Right.
Although I would say in general, most of our off-street parking is relatively low crime. And in opposite of the, maybe those general trends, our biggest burglary problem is at Rancho. And that's just because the volume.
Right.
I think they find it, a more productive place to conduct legal activities. So yeah, there is some drawback to having hit it because you're not having the public and other people observing the activities, but we do go on regular patrol and check the parking lots.
Okay.
So it's not a factor that I would, consider controlling.
Okay, so not an issue with one or two. Is that okay? Got it. Thanks. Okay, thank you. I'm pretty comfortable with number 2.
There was one more question that came up out of some of the written comments. And it was about the, I guess, the integrity of the horse trailer parking. And I think we covered this in the committee meeting about what type of surface that would be, and, would it be hardened? I think what I remember hearing was it wouldn't necessarily be paved, but it probably would be a prepared or hardened surface. Is that correct?
Yes. So I think from the comments, I think there was some confusion that there were no lined designated horse trailer parking spaces because it is marked in the center of this oval that that's the equestrian gathering. And that's just where people can go with their horses. There will be lined parking spaces and it will be some kind of surface that wouldn't get muddy. We're not proposing a dirt pull through with equestrian trailers. We don't want anyone to get stuck. So the parking lot spaces for equestrians would be on either side of that drive aisle, and it would be a surface that's either paved or some kind of non-slip. That's going to be determined in our next phase, exactly what materials we're going to be using. But no, it would not be a dirt surface.
Great. Thanks
And
very much.
Yeah.
Well, I definitely support the number 2. I mean, mostly because of the less grading and and I like the idea of kind of 2 smaller spaces than 1. So I'll be going with your recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you also for this. I'm much more much more impressed by option 2. I have 2 or 3 questions though. One is a comment with the moon graphs. Tree removal is a big consideration, and that wasn't included on the moon graph. So just for what it's worth.
Okay.
I'm confused by the equestrian circulation on the slide that's up right now, frankly. So it shows the circulation is like all the way from the right of the outside and then runs across. I'm confused by that circulation. Can you explain that to me?
Sure. Maria, how do I turn on the laser pointer? Okay, so no. Sorry, I'm struggling. There we go. Okay, can you see my laser pointer?
Yeah.
Okay, so equestrian circulation, all vehicles, trailers, and passenger vehicles would enter here. And then circulation would have people turning right here. And then you can drive right in. So you see how this is not a square edge, how it's kind of a slanted edge. So that allows a truck and trailer to pull in here and then get straight for this parking spot or this one. And it's the same thing on the exit. So then equestrian trailers could just pull straight out of these parking spots onto the drive aisle and then circle around just like regular vehicles and then exit out this way. Is that your question?
Yeah, I was just confused though, because that isn't at all the pattern that's indicated here with the equestrian circulation. I see it like going across the lanes and then into the parking spaces at the top.
Oh, so I'm sorry. That's not for the truck and trailer. That's for the equestrians when they're leading their horses to the trails.
Oh, okay.
No, so that's not for truck and trailer. My
Okay,
apologies.
big difference. Okay. And then in that circular area, the equestrian gathering area, there are 2 trees there that are in that area, and I'm like, why are they being removed on the road end of that?
Here?
Those 2, yes, thank you. Why are those being removed?
I
They
think
don't
it's
look like they're in the way of anything.
I think, Alex, do you have an answer for this? So I would assume that those are being removed for maintenance purposes, especially if it has high root growth that's going to prevent the pavement from staying flat. There's a different engineer that originally designed this plan, but we will do study if those 2 trees do actually need to be removed. We took a pretty conservative approach of pegging more trees for removal than may be needed. If we can leave them, it'd be good to leave them.
Okay.
But I'd have to look into that.
Okay, great. And then kind of along the same lines, but a little bit the converse of that, the 2 green areas that are in the vehicle, the car, yeah, there, and the other area. There's 1 tree that's being proposed to be taken out in the top one. But I'm wondering, why don't we have any trees in those areas? Because it will keep the parking lots shadier, cooler.
Yeah, do you want to speak to
I don't
this?
know how big those green areas are.
Sure.
Senior planner, Jared Hart in our planning department. I think in that case, those are likely bioretention areas for treatment of stormwater. So I think that's something we could explore in terms of our landscaping that would be installed in those areas. So we could consider planting new trees in that area. But I believe those they're somewhat limited given the soils that may be needed to treat stormwater in that location.
Okay, just if it's possible and I'd say it doesn't delay things, but I don't want to delay things. But if it's possible though, having a tree or two in a parking area really does help keep it cool and makes it a much more pleasant environment. I'm also in support of this plan. It's very creative. It's very creative. And I like that it's not just one solid hunk of parking, and that you've integrated some green areas, whether they're bioswale areas or not, or something else, bioswale areas within the parking. So I think it's exceedingly creative, and I'm very supportive of it. Just think about those trees again, both whether they're removed or added in the ways I've described. So thank you so very much.
I do have one question.
Yes.
I seem to remember we approved a multi-use trail for horses, bicyclists, and hikers last time, maybe a month ago. But the bicyclists can't come by here. Is that right?
Anna,
I
could you
thought
speak to
that
this?
it, because
Jared,
I'm sorry, I got
that's not my
confused,
project.
so.
Jared Hart, Senior Planner with Planning. Yeah, so I believe on this, the parking wouldn't preclude someone with a bike from parking there. However, there would not be access. They would have to go out on the road because the multi-use trail would not connect with the proposed north parking area here.
Okay.
So they would need,
yeah.
if someone did a bicyclist,
Yeah.
someone with a bike park there, they could
Sure.
ride down the road and then
Okay.
connect it.
And we would explain that, but with signage or something.
I believe, yeah, that would be something we'd want to do. Yeah.
You definitely would.
That there's
yeah.
not access for bikes onto the trails.
I just want the bicyclists not to feel excluded, but that's not where they are allowed in the lot, in the preserve, right?
Correct.
Right.
Correct. Yeah, we
And-
could have some signage directing them to the Alma lot where they could access the multi-use trail.
Yeah, and maybe even at the gate, at the entrance, if you got your bike, go to the other one. Yeah. And my other question, sort of along the line of the trees, I saw 5 red stem beauties, little plants in that area between the 2 lots. What are their chances of survival during the construction of this? They're sort of, they've just got an unfortunate name because they're not really beautiful. But red stem beauty is such a cute name.
Yeah, I think ultimately the number of trees that would need to be removed would be determined in the next kind of that
These are
detailed
just little
design.
plants. They look like miner's lettuce.
Okay, I would assume if they're outside the footprint of the
Construction.
paved area, then we would try our best to preserve those. And I guess going back to Director Ullman's question as well, I think another reason we may not see trees on this design here is just the point at which we're at with design being a conceptual design. I don't think our engineer got into kind of detailed landscaping design at this stage, and so that's certainly something that'll be designed, be included in our design in the next phase of work.
Super quick follow-up to that. Yeah, I should have said this before when I was speaking is, there are trees all around this except for on the bottom. And it seems like I sort of think I heard something, but maybe wrong, that the growing conditions for the trees there seem to be apple. I don't know what kind of trees there are there. I don't remember. But so even if there are trees, if you have to put the bioswale in the middle of those car parking areas, consider there are opportunities here to create kind of a gateway or such or surround with trees, to make it a more pleasant experience and cooler as well. So,
Right.
thank you.
Thank you.
Mitigate any removals by planting new ones.
Let's see, yeah, so I appreciate the comment that it's kind of, let's see, that we're at conceptual right now, but when I look on the forthcoming schedule, it doesn't really come back to the board, right? So, so that I guess that's why it is important to incorporate these comments, because I mean, I do agree with, Director Holman's comment about keeping the trees if possible, and in the bioswales, if you find some species which are, could survive with those conditions, that would be great. Oh, some comments?
Hi, Alex Harker, Capital Project Manager to Engineering and Construction. And I wanted to say one factor that we have to consider with the trees is coordinating with our Natural Resources Department, because I know they have a lot of concerns about using nursery stock. There are ecological reasons and also the potential for introducing Phytophthora. So I know on other projects, they've had concerns about bringing in trees to parking lots for that reason, or bringing in any sort of nursery stock unless absolutely necessary. So it would be a matter of weighing the risk. I know another concern of theirs is cost of maintaining trees in parking lot areas. But we would have to confer with them to determine their perspective on that.
So, maybe we need to start our own nursery, but it's, I can't say for sure, but perhaps there are young trees in this area that could be transplanted in particular areas here that would be advantageous to creating a wonderful setting here. Don't we add trees other places? I mean, we use nursery stock sometimes. So I understand the concern and appreciate the concern a great deal, but I just don't want it to be like a stop for consideration for here. The other thing, if this doesn't come back to us, I very much appreciate it, as you can imagine. I very much appreciated the description that was given on page 7 about parking lot design and such. So this won't come back to us incorporating the parking lot design guidelines that are being developed? What's the timeline for how those coordinate?
So I believe, well, I don't know the exact date, but I know that the parking lot guidelines are forthcoming within the next few months. Maybe Susanna can speak to that, but I do know that the plan is that if this option is approved, we're going to be moving forward with the RFPQ. Basically at the very beginning of February. And that's going to be important in order to keep on the schedule so that we can initiate the construction in 2026, as we're geared up to do and hoping to do. But I will.
Hi, I'm Susanna Chen, Assistant General Manager, and Alex is right. We are in the process of working on developing the design guideline for parking area. We have committed to bring the design guidelines to the board for your consideration in the March and April timeline, and we're still shooting for that and do some internal evaluation. We realized that due to our in-house resource constraint, we will need some consulting support to develop that guidelines. And we are working with, in the process of retaining the consultant. And again, we still trying to meet that commitment to bring the guideline for your consideration in March and April timeline. That will provide, and the goal is to develop a set of guidelines to establish the framework for us to determining the appropriate landscape and aesthetic criteria as we determine the characters of a parking area that is consistent with the district's open space value. So that is our goal. And then we're hoping that those timelines, those guidelines will be in time to help with the development of this project and other parking area projects that are in the pipeline.
If the RFPQ is going out for this in early February, though, and given the timeline you said for those guidelines, how is someone going to respond if the criteria might change?
Yeah, and one of the things that we can incorporate into the RFPQ for this project is that to specify or emphasize that the consultants that we're looking for should have some proven record of producing projects and designs that can complement the built environment with the natural environment, allowing the two harmonize together. And we wanted to make sure that the consultant that proposed to this project have that kind of experience.
That's helpful. Doesn't quite get us there, but that's helpful at least. So, okay, I guess, yeah, because this is 41,000 square feet of parking area, impervious surface, or impervious or permeable, or whichever it's going to be. So it's a lot of area to consider. So, well, I don't know. This isn't scheduled to come back to us, but it'd be interesting to have it come back to us because it's going to be on the front end of incorporating any of these guidelines, I would bet. So, I look to Anna.
So I'm gonna check in with Susanna and Alex. How long is that design process going to take? Because my sense is that we will have those design guidelines reviewed by the board and approved within sufficient times for them to incorporate into the design of the parking area. Because the RFP goes out, but there's a whole process in receiving proposals, reviewing, et cetera, before they even start design.
Yeah, so we would really be kicking off 35% design, just like kicking off the process in May. So that's already a pretty long lead time just because the RFPQ and the process of awarding the contract to the designer takes a while. And then we'll be in the process of designing for almost a year. So there is a lot of time for those two consultants to coordinate with the development of the guidelines.
So yeah, they'll be able to have those guidelines as they start their design process.
Absolutely. I don't know if we would bring it back after that further design iteration, if we would be bringing that back to the board. But they would definitely be incorporating the board approved guidelines into their design work.
It seems like, and I'd like to hear what any colleague has to say or colleagues have to say, but it seems like it would be great, given that timeline and the coordination that will hopefully be happening, if this parking lot design would come back to us, because then we can see how those guidelines are being applied and how fitting they are if we need to make any kind of adjustments or that sort of thing. So I look forward to what any colleagues have to say.
I always have something to say. I think Karen brings up a good point, but I have to admit, I'm kind of driven by the fact that we need to get this project moving and get this thing going. And what I don't want to do is, I mean, we have done parking lots, we're doing parking lots, and I'm not sure that we need the guidelines to do this parking lot per se. I get it, Karen, if we can somehow merge it with the timing since we're close. But I'm going to recommend to staff that we not slow this down for the guideline. Hopefully we use this as a way of informing the guideline going forward. Or vice versa, I guess. Yeah. So that's how I would err on the side of let's get this going, let's get the guidelines going, but this timing of this kind of takes precedence. My thoughts.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think I would agree. Just because I think it's gonna, both of them are gonna take a while. And I mean, the design of this option 2 is inherently more appropriate for the site, right? I mean, it's a dramatic improvement over, yes. So, yeah, so I think staff and consultants are gonna keep in mind, our goals of compatible design. So I'm comfortable with it moving forward as it is.
Zoe?
Yeah, I am too. And I'm also mindful of the fact that we as a board can't like speak out of both sides of our mouth. Where on the one hand, we're saying, hurry up. And on the other hand, we're saying, oh, wait, we need this to come back to us one more time. So I think in this particular instance, given that we have design guidelines coming, I really want to see staff move forward with this and get on schedule as much as I can.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it would be good not to add additional, places where we come back to the board because we're actually trying to do the opposite. But there does seem to be an opportunity here to talk about this at the level of goals, right? What do we want to see from this type of project? And it seems like that's going to be in a relatively small number of months here. So it has an opportunity to impact the thinking that goes into this project. And I think I mentioned in the last meeting that I think we need to be better at working from that level of goals. And, so we need to be thinking about that when we're talking about those guidelines. How will that impact, these upcoming projects? And maybe even at that meeting, we can talk about specifics of that, how would you apply this in particular instances? But I would definitely like to do it without inserting an additional point where we come back to the board.
Just one more comment, which is, I said in my comments that this is a really creative concept. And if it doesn't sound contradictory, that being this creative with this concept and how this fits better into the setting, it's not only that the design guidelines for parking areas could inform this, but this kind of thinking could also inform the design guidelines. So you've got a good start here, a really good start. So keep thinking creatively like that, and I hope you'll coordinate and consult with the design guidelines entity that's doing that along the way. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. And I think you will have that opportunity to talk about the goals and talk about the value and how to reflect and highlight the district's open space value as part of the design guideline development. So you will have the opportunity to talk about that when we bring the design guideline to you.
Great to see you.
Yeah, this is obviously an incredibly complex, both on the ground and in our mind. And I think it points out how difficult it is for us as the board to back off a little bit and move away from, gee, I wish it were perfect, to having that sense of wanting it to be absolutely the best, getting in the way of accomplishing a whole raft of projects. And I guess my sense of it is at this point, it's wonderful as a concept. It's going to provide us with a whole array of information as we review this, because we won't be totally satisfied with it. But if we can be primarily satisfied with it, we can move on to the next one and learn from it and be even better the next round. So I would go along with my colleagues and say, I don't think bringing it back to us as a full board at this point in the process is useful. So, thank you.
I have faith. I have faith you'll do a great job. And I'll leave those decisions to you. So I'm okay with not bringing it back.
Thank you.
I drive by a Mid-Penn parking lot every day, and since I've been on the board, I've really come to appreciate what went into it. And it looks like it grew there. So, yeah. I have one public comment. Do we have any online,
We
Maria?
have one virtual. Yes.
Yeah, and one, so we have
Mhm.
two public comments. The first one is Mike Bouchou. I beg your pardon? Oh, okay, okay.
Okay, we're gonna call upon, let's see, Pamela Warren. It looks like she just dropped off. So we're gonna go ahead and start with you. And hopefully she'll go back online right now.
Thank you very much, Mike Bashou, Equestrian Trail Riders Action Committee, one of your local equestrians that wants to be able to ride in this preserve and enjoy it, and then looking forward to this parking lot being developed. I really like option 2. I really like what the engineering group has done to try and fit into a very, very, very difficult area. Many people don't realize a 20% side slope is just about enough to turn a vehicle over if it was trying to drive across it. So that's really steep. So that we've pushed this up into a little higher area where it's flatter is very, very beneficial. As Kurt has mentioned, I use the El Corte Madera parking lot, which is the same type of parking structure here. From an engineering standpoint, if you allow the outside area to be trodden on by horses that are tied to the trailer, it doesn't take a lot of space out of the extra area. You put your barrier in, the horse is either going to be behind the trailer or to one side. And as Kurt has said, even when the circulation traffic goes by us, and I think El Corte Madera is 50 some parking lots also, it's not bad. The people will come around, they'll see the horse, they'll stop, they'll wait, we'll get the horse out of the way, they go by. Please don't make it any smaller than what was done up at El Corte Madera, because at El Corte Madera, the car parking spots are as narrow as they can be, and they actually abut next to us, which does make it very tight. So those are my general comments. One other comment that I would make to try and do from an engineering standpoint, and it seemed like it was a done deal that the poor bicyclists have to go out on the road. I'd really hope that you guys can find a way to get the bikes down to a trail that they can use, and not have to go out on that section of road. If I can go down there on my horse, they should be able to go down there, but there may be other circumstances that don't allow that. But for getting 50 parking spots up here, you're going to have a multi-use user group that wants to use it. And I'd like the best environment for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're gonna go back to Pamela Warren. If you can go ahead and unmute yourself, please.
Okay,
Thank you.
I'm assuming you can hear me.
Yes, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I've been a rider and a boarder at Bear Creek Stables for going on 8 years now. I appreciate the sentiment by the last speaker about the bicyclists, but we have sort of come to terms about how we're going to dice up our areas. And we've got a lot of kids on ponies who aren't necessarily experienced riders. So we've agreed to some separation from the bicyclists. My husband's a mountain biker, and I think we've had more than one walkthrough with board members, and I appreciate that. I do have some concerns on option 2. I don't understand, since it's all one-way driving, if I park my horse trailer behind another horse trailer, I have to wait for that horse trailer to leave before I can pull out, especially if I have a 3, 4, or 5 horse trailer. I've got 4 horses tied to either side of the trailer. I think that needs to be rethought. I also am a little concerned why there's 2 roads instead of maybe one larger consolidated road. That seems to be two roads going to the same exact spot. Maybe there could be some economy with that. We do know when horses are tied up, they can spook and spin out and even pull off the trailer in an event. So the physical separation is going to be paramount to safety. As a designer, I would say, again, that projects don't develop guidelines. Guidelines develop good projects. So I would say that all the homework you can do before this, and Midpen has done 1 million parking lots. I'm sure that this isn't starting from ground zero. I still am a fan of the consolidated option number 1. There's sadly, people come through here and smoke and vape and do a lot of things they probably shouldn't do on the trails and in these parking lots. And if there was just some public eye on it, that would be really great. We all know that there would be no 20% slope because you've already said you would make it a complete flat and level area. Also, the porta potties, I assume the restrooms proposed are porta potties, because there's no speaking of leach fields or any fresh water coming into this area, but there's no clarification in the documentation for that. And that, of course, would be some more money that the budget doesn't really show right now. So the way I see it right now, there's really only 3 viable parking trailer spots if these are truly pull in, pull out, or you'd have to drive on the wrong side of the road. And if they're head in, now both trailers have to reverse to get out. So I think for me, there's some confusion as to how this pull in, pull out spot works. I see only 3 viable horse trailer spots. Also, our trail's been closed for a long time now. We're still going on 2 years. It'll take a while for the horsemen to come back, so please be patient for our outside riders to come in to find us again. Thank you.
We have no more virtual comments.
Accept conceptual design alternative number 2 for a new vehicle and horse trailer parking area at Bear Creek Redwoods Open Space Preserve, which is the Planning and Natural Resources Committee's preferred option to proceed into environment review and design development. May I have
Oh, thank you. I was
Did I
just going
read
to say,
correctly?
if she could just show it, which she just did.
The general manager's recommendation or the circulation?
No.
Chair McNiven, might I make a request?
Yes, please.
And that is that perhaps a staff member reach out to Ms. Warren to answer her questions from our virtual comment. She had a number of questions regarding
Yes.
option 2. So if a staff member could perhaps reach out to her and answer her questions, I think that would be helpful. Thank you.
If appropriate, I'd like to move the general manager's recommendation.
May we have a roll call vote, please?
I'm supportive of the motion, but I'm just assuming here that our comments about consideration of trees and that sort of thing would be incorporated into staff's thinking as you're looking forward to doing the design for this further down the road.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Director Gleason?
Yes.
Director Christine Tucker? Yes. Director Rothel?
Yes.
President McNiven?
Yes.
Director Holman?
Yes.
Director Kishimoto? Director Seer?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 7-0.
Great work. All right, on to committee reports. Actually, there was one for me, the Basic Policy Ad Hoc Committee. Yeah. Which I think I report out on. Yeah. The Basic Policy Ad Hoc Committee, we reviewed the basic policy, coastal and coastal service plans to find gaps and conflicts prepared by our controller, Patrick Miller, had prepared a report showing the gaps and conflicts between the basic policy and the coastal service plan. And we confirmed the areas that needed up in the basic policy that need update, and the updated draft basic policy will be brought to the board in March. Okay. Staff, do you have any reports?
Susanna Chen, Assistant General Manager. If my may, can I make a correction on your report out on the ad hoc committee?
Please.
Yeah, so we will be bringing the draft language to address the gaps that we will identify as part of the last meeting to the ad hoc committee in March. And we are hoping to bring the draft language to the full board for review in May.
Thanks, Susanna.
All right, so thanks for this opportunity. I wanted to report out that through our partnership with the city of Cupertino, our visitors now have a better and safer parking, bike access to our Rancho San Antonio open space preserve. The city of Cupertino, towards the end of last year, installed a Class 2 bike lane on Crystal Way Drive, both directions within the city limits. And installing the bike lane was identified in the city's bike transportation plan in 2016, but it was low on their priority. Improving bike access was also identified in the district's Rancho Multimodal Access Study as one of the priority transportation demand management strategy for implementations. And through our partnership, we are able to share half of the construction costs for the installation, allowing Cupertino to move that project up on their priority list. And now we're really happy to report that this partnership allowed both agencies to meet our goal in a timely manner. So if you have not had a chance to see the new bike lane, I have some really awesome pictures that was taken by our field staff and happy to share.
Susanna for president.
Thank you. Well done. Thank you.
I just have one thing to report. This was, I guess, 2 Tuesdays ago. I went over to Peninsula Open Space Trust and I was their guest speaker at their Lunch and Learn and spoke about Midpen, but specifically about Measure AA and the impacts and benefits that Measure AA has brought to the organization and to our ability to leverage partnerships and outside funding. And then also the focus that we have emphasized around a number of key topics, key goals and priorities, and that's biodiversity, climate resiliency, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it was very well received. I had a huge turnout of staff and their board, and apparently the presentation was recorded and is being passed around because they were very the board there was very impressed with the impact that Measure AA funding has brought to the work that we're doing.
Great. Thank you.
That it? This meeting is adjourned.
Individual.
Oh, reconvene. I missed the very last thing on my list. Director's reports.
I'll start. I mentioned it a little earlier. I attended the Santa Clara Valley Water Commission, which is representatives from all the urban areas as well as a variety of other organizations. The intent of which is to provide the board, typically water board, with suggestions and a place for people to comment and so forth. It basically meets twice a year and gives me an opportunity to connect with a couple of folks who are local elected and obviously a very thorough, robust, lot of reading. But in terms of things that I need to bring back to you, just to, that we're aware of um, both cities and county attempting to do some effort to help move folks who are currently trying to live on the creeks area, help move them out and find other kinds of shelter. And so that's one of the areas that they're really working hard on. Of course, the problem is cost of living and the fact that some of the clients don't want to be assisted in that manner. So it's a very complex issue and it's not going to be solved quickly, but there's been some progress, some reduction in the number of folks close to the creeks, which then means there's somewhat less opportunity for polluting the creeks before they go on into the bay. So anyway, always an interesting process. So thanks for your trust in me to represent you.
On Monday, I attended a lunch and learn on the Newt project down at by Alma Bridge Road and by Julie Anderson. So I think it was mostly just internal folks. But wow, Julie is just so good. And this is probably the fourth presentation I've heard about the Newts, and I learned something new each time. So we're making good progress on it. I'm really glad we have a great staff working on it as well. Really nicely done. Yeah.
So are these lunch and learns, are they meant for the general public?
You know, this one was specifically for staff, but we're going to start looking at general public as well. But Director Kishimoto, I'll get together with you because you have a great contact list of all the people you contacted for the lunch and learns that you brought together. So I'll get a download from you.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I went to, it was really interesting. All right, I don't think I'm going to hit the gavel this time.
Oh, you remember. I think you have two more board members here.
Oh, sorry, I thought.
No. Two things. First off, 2 weeks ago, we received a public comment, a written comment from Jim Sullivan regarding e-mountain bikes and the use of the other powered mobility device designation for allowing e-mountain bikes on on trails illegally, essentially. So I was wondering if it might be possible to get a report out from our rangers about the prevalence of that, and also the degree to which we might be seeing illegal trail building in areas of our preserves that are perhaps more accessible now that there are e-mountain bikes. We're certainly seeing it in GGNRA lands.
So I just want to understand the first part of the question so we can report back
So the question
accurately.
is, folks who are riding e-mountain bikes and claiming when they're caught that they have a disability of some sort, that, they have that other powered mobility device designation that, is their umbrella.
Yeah, and we are tracking that. So when we first started, we weren't tracking it, but we started getting enough claims, which it would be a very narrow mobility disability because it would be something that didn't allow you to walk into a preserve. So you would probably expect it to really be a handful of people, but we definitely have a lot more than that. And we are tracking that. And over time, we'll accumulate that data and report out on the use. And you can't say from the individual contact whether it's a false or a legal use of the claim of disability.
Okay, I just want us to stay aware of that as a board so that we understand what's going on and kind of how often our rangers are seeing that. So
yeah, we're actually tracking the numbers and we'll be able to report back. I don't know if we'll have anything ready we'll be doing the activity report that we are going to be doing annually like we did last year. Sometime probably March timeframe. If we have numbers, we'll report out at that point.
Okay.
As far as the illegal trail use, we actually have better control of that than we've had in the past. That we've taken kind of years to deal with that issue, mostly through proper, planning and management of established trail systems. The biggest example being El Corte Madera. But it does still happen and exist. I don't know that there would be any way to tie that, or certainly nothing that we've seen with the advent of e-bikes to show that it's increased because of that.
Illegal trail building.
Illegal trail building.
Okay.
We still come across it. It's not the problem that it was in our preserves 20 years ago, and we do try to stay on top of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. The other thing too, this is the 1-year anniversary this week of the shooting in Half Moon Bay. And just to say that if there's a silver lining ever from something as horrendous as that, the awareness of the farm workers' plight on the coast side has really grown in a very significant way. And I'm very proud of the district and our ag policy for recognizing farm worker housing as something that is a responsibility that we need to share with the community. And yeah, so just to keep us all aware of that, what's happening on the coast. Thank you.
I also went to the Lunch and Learn, and I would echo Director Riffle's comments that every time I go to one of these presentations, I learn something new. So it was really good, and I would definitely like to see those be public if possible.
I don't want to come back.